Hey everyone, I'm Iulia, a 28-year-old marketing executive. I love being creative and turning ideas into reality. My wedding day was perfect, like something out of a dream. I married my college sweetheart, James. The sun was shining, flowers were everywhere, and love filled the air as I walked down the aisle. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. "You look absolutely stunning," James whispered as I reached him at the altar. I smiled back, my heart racing with excitement. "And you look incredibly handsome," I replied. The ceremony was beautiful, but I noticed James's father, Richard, sitting in the front row with a serious look on his face. He's always been a bit intense. At the reception, my best friend and maid of honor, Lisa, pulled me aside. "Girl, you did it. I'm so happy for you," she said. "Thanks, Lisa, I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, hugging her. As we mingled with the guests, I overheard Richard's golf buddies, Tom and Mike, making some inappropriate jokes. "Hey James, better enjoy the honeymoon while you can. It's all downhill from here," Tom joked, laughing and nudging Mike. I rolled my eyes, trying to ignore them, but James squeezed my hand to reassure me. Later, I noticed James's mom, Eleanor, hovering around Richard, always seeking his approval. It was a little unsettling to see how she listened to him for every little thing. "Eleanor, dear, get me another drink," Richard ordered. "Of course, honey, right away," she replied quietly. The best part of the reception came when my boss, Victoria, walked over to us with a gift. "Iulia, James, congratulations, I have a little something for you," she said, handing us an envelope. We opened it and were shocked. "Tickets to Bali." "Victoria, this is too much," I exclaimed. "Nonsense, you two deserve it. Go plan your dream honeymoon," she insisted with a smile. As the reception wound down, James and I found a quiet corner. "Can you believe it? We're married and going to Bali," I said excitedly. James pulled me close. "I can't wait to start our life together, Iulia, just you and me, no distractions." Little did we know, our perfect bubble was about to burst, but in that moment, all I could think about was the amazing future ahead of us. If only I had known what was coming, maybe I could have been more prepared, but hey, that's life, right? Full of unexpected twists and turns. As we said goodbye to our guests and got ready to leave for our temporary apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the way Richard kept looking at us or how Tom and Mike were whispering and laughing in the corner, but I pushed those thoughts aside. Nothing could ruin this perfect day, or so I thought. 2 days before our big trip, I was rushing around our apartment, checking things off my packing list. "James, honey, have you seen the Bali tickets? I want to put them in my carry-on." James looked up from his laptop, frowning. "I thought you had them." We tore the apartment apart, searching every drawer, every pocket. Nothing. Panic started to set in. "Maybe we left them at your parents' place?" I suggested, trying to stay calm. James nodded and called them. "Mom, it's James. Have you seen our honeymoon tickets?" I watched his face change as he listened, and my stomach dropped. "He did what?" James exploded. "Put him on the phone now." James paced the room, his face turning red. "Dad, tell me you didn't take our honeymoon tickets to Bali." I could hear Richard's loud voice through the phone. "Don't be dramatic. I deserve a vacation after paying for your big wedding. The boys and I needed a getaway." "Those were our tickets, our honeymoon," James shouted. "Oh please, you can go anytime. I had a small window with the guys. You'll understand when you're older," Richard replied. James looked at me, his eyes filled with anger and guilt. "Dad, you need to come back. This isn't right." "Don't be silly, we're already here. Make other plans. I'll bring you back a souvenir." The call ended, and James stood there, holding the phone, looking lost. "I can't believe he did this," I whispered, tears starting to fill my eyes. James pulled me into a hug. "I'm so sorry, Iulia, I don't know what to say." I pulled away, wiping my eyes. "What are we going to do?" James sighed. "I don't know, maybe we can book something else," but I could see the conflict in his eyes. He was angry, but not as angry as I was. The next day at work, I was still upset. As I passed Victoria's office, I overheard her on the phone. "Yes, the deal's off. Richard's company has been causing us nothing but trouble. I'm starting to wonder if they're playing by the rules at all." I froze. "Richard's company, James's family business?" Victoria spotted me. "Iulia, is everything okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just some honeymoon stress." Victoria gave me a sympathetic look. "Oh, sweetie, is there anything I can do?" I shook my head, though my mind was racing. What was going on with Richard's company? That evening, I talked to James. Honey, I overheard something at work about your dad's company. James tensed up. What about it? Victoria mentioned some problems, said they might not be playing by the rules. Do you know anything about that? I asked. James ran his hand through his hair. Dad's always been creative with business, but I'm sure it's nothing serious. But I could see doubt in his eyes. This was bigger than the stolen tickets, much bigger. James, we need to figure out what's going on, with the tickets, with the company, all of it, I said firmly. He nodded slowly. You're right, but, Iulia, this is my family we're talking about. I took his hand. I know, but we're family now too, and something isn't right here. As we sat together, planning our next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that our perfect life was about to get a lot more complicated, but I was ready to face it. No one messes with my honeymoon and gets away with it. With our honeymoon plans ruined, James and I tried to make the best of our time off, but the more we looked into Richard's behavior, the worse things seemed. We decided to visit Eleanor, hoping she might help. As we sat in her living room, she broke down, crying. I'm so sorry about your tickets, she sobbed. Richard, he's always been like this, controlling everything, especially the money. I reached out to hold her hand. Eleanor, has he always treated you this way? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. 4 years. He makes me feel so small, like I can't do anything right. James looked shocked. Mom, why didn't you ever say anything? I was afraid, she whispered. He threatened to leave me with nothing if I ever spoke up. My heart broke for her. This was worse than we thought. Later that week, my friend Lisa called, sounding upset. Iulia, I don't know how to tell you this, but I overheard something at the country club. What is it, Lisa? Richard's been telling people you're a gold digger, that you're only with James for his money. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. He said what? I asked, shocked. I'm so sorry, Iulia. I know it's not true, Lisa said. I confronted him, but he just laughed it off. I was furious. Thanks for telling me, Lisa. We'll handle this. When I told James, he was livid. I can't believe he'd stoop so low. Iulia, I'm so sorry. But the final straw came when James decided to dig into the family business finances. He spent hours looking through documents, growing paler by the minute. Iulia, he said, his voice shaking, my dad's been embezzling from the company for years. I sat down, shocked. Oh, James, what are we going to do? I don't know. This could ruin everything, the business, our family. I took a deep breath. James, we have to stand up to him. This can't go on. He nodded slowly. You're right, but, he's my father. I know, honey, but what he's doing is wrong, to us, to your mom, to the business. We have to stop him. The next day, I confided in Victoria about what we had discovered. She listened carefully, her face growing serious. Iulia, this is very serious. If what you're saying is true, Richard could face some severe consequences. I know, I said, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety, but we can't let him keep hurting people. As we were planning our next move, we got word that Richard was back from Bali. He swaggered into our apartment as if nothing had happened. Kids, did you miss me? Bali was fantastic. You should really go someday, he said with a smirk, but his grin faded as soon as he saw our faces. James stood up, standing tall next to me. Dad, we need to talk. About the tickets, about how you've been treating Mom, about the rumors you've been spreading, and about the money you've been stealing from the company. Richard's face went white. For the first time, he looked scared. I squeezed James's hand, feeling proud. This was just the beginning, but we were in this together. Richard's toxic behavior was about to end, and he had no idea what was coming. Over the next few weeks, we put our plan into action. James and I worked tirelessly, gathering every piece of evidence we could find of Richard's embezzlement and shady business practices. Look at this, James said one night, pointing to a spreadsheet. He's been siphoning off funds for years. I nodded grimly, and here's proof of him manipulating contracts. Victoria's going to want to see this. True to her word, Victoria used her connections to trigger a full audit of Richard's company. The day the auditors arrived, you could hear Richard shout from 3 floors down. What is the meaning of this? He roared. But it was Eleanor who delivered the final blow. With our support, she finally found the courage to file for divorce. I've frozen all our joint accounts, she told us, her voice shaking but determined. He won't be able to touch a penny. As the evidence piled up and the walls closed in, Richard showed up at our door. He looked haggard, desperate. Kids, please, he begged. I can explain everything. I'll make it right. I'll pay for a new honeymoon, anywhere you want to go, Richard begged. James stood firm. It's too late, Dad, we're done. You can't do this to me, Richard shouted. I'm your father. I stepped forward. A father doesn't steal from his children or spread lies about them. You made your choice, Richard, now live with it. We shut the door on his protests, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. The next few months were a whirlwind. Richard faced multiple fraud charges, and his business empire started to crumble. Tom and Mike, his golf buddies who'd enjoyed our stolen honeymoon, distanced themselves quickly. I always knew there was something off about Richard, Tom claimed, conveniently forgetting his part in it all. Eleanor, free from Richard's control, began to thrive. She started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping others escape toxic relationships. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in years, she told us over dinner one night. At work, Victoria called me into her office. Iulia, your integrity through all of this has been remarkable. We'd like to offer you a promotion. I was speechless. Thank you, Victoria, that means so much. Finally, almost a year after our wedding, James and I got our honeymoon. As we sat on a beach in Bali, watching the sunset, I reflected on everything we'd been through. You know, James said, squeezing my hand, I think we're stronger now than we ever would have been if things had gone smoothly. I nodded, leaning into him. We've learned a lot about standing up for ourselves and not letting toxic people control our lives. To us, James said, raising his glass, and to cutting out the poison and embracing the good. As we clinked our glasses, a sense of peace washed over me. We'd been through so much, but we came out stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever. That, more than any dream honeymoon, was worth celebrating. If you were in my shoes, would you have given Richard a second chance after he apologized and offered to pay for a new honeymoon? Or do you think cutting toxic family members out of your life completely is the right move, no matter what?
I never imagined a simple doorbell could herald such chaos. It rang with an innocuous melody, yet the sound sent tremors through my peaceful afternoon like a distress signal. I peered through the window and my heart sank. Rowena and Elsie stood on my doorstep, armed with suitcases and sheepish grins. As I opened the door, Rowena swept me into an unwanted embrace. Brinley, darling. Surprise, we'll be staying with you for a while. Elsie breezed past me, already making herself at home. Thanks for having us, sis. You're a lifesaver. I forced a smile, my mind reeling. Carter emerged from the kitchen, his face mirroring my confusion. Mom, Elsie, what's going on? Well, you see, Rowena began, we're having a bit of work done on the house, and we'll need to stay somewhere for a few weeks. Carter's brow furrowed. You didn't mention anything about renovations. It was rather sudden, Rowena said with a dismissive wave. But no need to fret, dear. We'll be out of your hair before you know it. Elsie plopped onto the couch, kicking off her shoes. Yeah, just a temporary thing. You two lovebirds can handle us for a little while, right? I shot Carter a pleading look, but he simply shrugged, seemingly accepting the situation. As Rowena and Elsie chattered about their living arrangements, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. My peaceful oasis had been infiltrated, and I had a gut instinct this was just the beginning of a very unwelcome disturbance. Rowena and Elsie wasted no time making themselves at home. And by at home, I mean trampling all over my personal space and boundaries. It started small, Elsie borrowing my makeup without asking, or Rowena snooping through my home office under the guise of curiosity. But soon, their intrusions grew more audacious. One morning, I discovered Elsie lounging in my favorite armchair, her bare feet propped up on my antique coffee table, a family heirloom from my grandmother. When I politely asked her to remove her feet, she scoffed and rolled her eyes. Relax, Bryn. It's just a table. The disrespect stung, but before I could respond, Rowena emerged from my office, rifling through a stack of my sketchbooks. Rowena, those are private, I protested, but she waved me off dismissively. Oh, don't be so uptight, dear. I'm just admiring your work. I bit my tongue, recognizing the futility of arguing. As the days wore on, their audacity escalated. Elsie started borrowing my clothes without permission, leaving makeup stains and spills in their wake. Rowena treated my office like her own personal lounge, leaving coffee rings and crumbs scattered across my desk. The final straw came when I realized my high-end drawing tablet was missing. I tore through the house, searching every nook and cranny, but it was nowhere to be found. When I confronted Rowena and Elsie, they feigned innocence, suggesting I must have misplaced it. But deep down, I knew the truth. One of them had taken it, without a shred of respect or regard for my belongings or workspace. As if that wasn't enough, I later discovered that an essential project file had been mysteriously deleted from my computer. Hours of work, gone in an instant. I tried to remain calm, but my frustration was reaching a boiling point. When Carter returned home from work that evening, I wasted no time venting my grievances, but to my dismay, he simply shrugged it off, urging me to be more accommodating. "They're family, Bryn," he said, as if that excused their entitled behavior. "I'm sure it was just an accident." I wanted to scream. Didn't he see how disrespectful and invasive they were being? How could he dismiss my concerns so easily? As I lay in bed that night, seething with anger and resentment, a dark thought crept into my mind. If Carter wouldn't stand up for me, I would have to find a way to stand up for myself, no matter what it took. As if the constant invasions of privacy and disrespect for my belongings weren't enough, Rowena and Elsie managed to find a new way to stomp all over my heart. It started when I overheard Elsie bragging to her friends about her latest gig at a local bar. "Yeah, I've been playing this sweet vintage violin. Gives me such a cool, rustic vibe on stage." My blood ran cold. There was only one vintage violin she could be referring to, my late grandfather's treasured instrument, passed down through generations. The thought of Elsie carelessly lugging it around to seedy bars made me sick. I confronted her later that day, my voice trembling with anger. "Have you been using Grandpa's violin for your gigs?" Elsie had the audacity to roll her eyes. "Relax, Bryn. I'm just borrowing it." "Borrowing it? That violin is a priceless family heirloom. You can't just take it without asking." "Geez, calm down. It's not like it's made of gold or something." Her flippant attitude only fueled my rage. I stormed into the living room, where Rowena sat sipping tea, and demanded an explanation. "Did you know about this? Did you give her permission to take Grandpa's violin?" Rowena set down her cup, leveling me with an icy glare. "And what if I did? It's been gathering dust in the attic for years. At least Elsie is putting it to good use." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That violin was more than just an instrument. It was a cherished connection to my late grandfather, a man I deeply loved and respected, and they were treating it like a disposable toy. "Put it to good use?" I sputtered. "She's hauling it around to dive bars and God knows where else. It's gonna get damaged or stolen." "Don't be so dramatic," Rowena snapped. "Elsie is being responsible with it." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words died in my throat as Elsie sauntered in, cradling the violin with reckless abandon. Sure enough, there were fresh scratches and dents marring the once pristine surface. Tears of rage and heartbreak stung my eyes as I rushed over, carefully taking the instrument from her grasp. "You've damaged it," I choked out. "How could you be so careless?" Elsie merely shrugged. "It's just a silly old violin, no big deal." In that moment, I understood the depth of their disrespect and entitlement. To them, my cherished possessions and family heirlooms meant nothing. They were mere objects to be used and discarded at their convenience. As I cradled the battered violin, I knew something had to change. If they couldn't respect my boundaries or my belongings, I would find a way to make them pay, no matter what it took. Just when I thought Rowena and Elsie couldn't stoop any lower, Carter dropped a bombshell that shattered what little remained of my trust in him. We were sitting down for dinner, a rare moment of normalcy amidst the chaos, when he cleared his throat nervously. "Bryn, there's something I need to tell you." My fork hovered midair as a sense of dread washed over me. "What is it?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Well, you know my mom's been having some financial trouble lately." Of course I knew. Rowena's reckless spending and refusal to hold down a steady job had been a constant source of strain on the family. "Yeah, and?" I prodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. "She needed to borrow some money to get back on her feet," Carter admitted. "So I lent her a pretty significant amount from our savings." The fork clattered to my plate as the words hit me like a slap across the face. "You did what?" "Now, honey, don't get upset." "Don't get upset?" I sputtered, my voice rising with each word. "Carter, that was our money. Our life savings. How could you make such a huge financial decision without even consulting me?" His shoulders sagged. I know. But she's my mother, Bryn. She was in a real bind, and I wanted to help her out." My gaze shifted to Rowena, who sat smugly sipping her wine, as if this entire situation was perfectly normal. The sheer audacity of it all made my blood boil. "Help her out," I cried. "She's been helping herself to our finances for years. When is enough going to be enough?" Carter's brow furrowed defensively. "That's not fair. She's family and she needed our support." "Our support?" I laughed bitterly. "Or just your blind obedience?" Elsie snickered from across the table, clearly enjoying the show. I shot her a withering glare, my rage reaching a boiling point. "Stay out of this," I snapped. "You're just as bad as she is, taking whatever you want with no regard for anyone else." Carter slammed his fist on the table, startling us all. "That's enough. I'm sick of all this fighting and negativity. My mother needed help, so I helped her. End of story." I stared at him in disbelief, searching his face for any shred of remorse or understanding, and finding none. In that moment, it became painfully clear. Carter was so deep in his family's toxic web of manipulation, he was blind to the truth. As Rowena and Elsie exchanged smug glances, reveling in their victory, something inside me shifted. The rage and resentment I'd been bottling up for weeks solidified into a cold, hard resolve. If Carter wouldn't stand up for me, for us, then I would have to take matters into my own hands. It was time to fight fire with fire. The final straw came when Elsie crossed the unforgivable line of sabotaging my career. I was deep in preparation mode for a major client presentation, the kind of job that could make or break my fledgling design business. For days, I'd been pouring every ounce of my creative energy into crafting the perfect pitch deck. The night before the big meeting, I triple-checked that all my files were in order, down to the last detail. Satisfied, I powered down my computer and tried to get some rest, my mind buzzing with anticipation. The next morning, I arrived at the client's office bright and early, laptop in hand and ready to dazzle them with my concepts. But when I pulled up the presentation, my heart dropped into my stomach. The meticulously designed slides I'd spent countless hours perfecting were gone, replaced with a garish, haphazard mess of mismatched fonts and sloppy imagery. It looked like the work of a kindergartner, not a professional graphic designer. I frantically tried to recover the original files, but it was no use. They'd been completely overwritten. As the client's team filed into the conference room, I had no choice but to barrel ahead with the travesty before me. Needless to say, the meeting was a disaster. The client was utterly unimpressed, and by the end, I could practically see the smoke billowing from their ears in frustration. When I returned home later that day, seething with humiliation and defeat, the culprit was waiting for me with a smug grin. "How'd the big presentation go?" Elsie asked innocently. I saw red. "You did this, didn't you? You messed with my files." Her grin widened. "Oh, those old things? I figured they could use a little sprucing up." The sheer audacity of her words left me momentarily speechless. "You had no right. Those were my professional designs for an important client." Elsie shrugged nonchalantly. "What's the big deal? I just wanted to put my own creative spin on them." "Your spin?" I sputtered. "You completely butchered them. Do you have any idea how much time and effort went into that work?" "Yeesh, calm down," she scoffed. "It's not like I sold them off to a competitor or anything." A cold chill washed over me as the implication of her words sank in. "Wait, you didn't." The sly grin that crept across her face said it all. My heart pounded in my ears as the full weight of her betrayal hit me. "You stole my work," I whispered, horrified. "My intellectual property, and sent it to a competitor, didn't you?" Before she could respond, Winna came sauntering in, oblivious to the bombshell Elsie had just dropped. "What's all the fuss about?" "Elsie stole my designs," I cried, rounding on her. "She sabotaged my presentation and tried to pass off my work as her own." For once, Rowena's smug expression faltered, but only for a moment. "Oh, Brinley, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding." Her words trailed off as she took in the look of utter devastation on my face. In that moment, it was clear. They truly didn't care about the damage they'd caused, the boundaries they'd trampled, or the complete violation of my trust. Something inside me snapped. Tears of rage and heartbreak streamed down my cheeks as I came to a painful realization. If I wanted to reclaim my life, my business, and what little dignity I had left, there was only one path forward: revenge. In the aftermath of Elsie's unforgivable betrayal, I knew I had to take decisive action. not just for my own sake, but for my business and integrity as a professional. The next morning, I wasted no time seeking legal counsel. Intellectual property theft is a serious matter, the no-nonsense lawyer stated as she reviewed the damning evidence I'd compiled against Elsie. We have a strong case here. Relief washed over me. So you'll take it on? You can help me go after her? She leveled me with a steely gaze. I'll do everything in my power to ensure your original work is protected and that this Elsie is held accountable. But we need to move quickly before any more damage is done. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. Whatever it takes, I want to hit her where it really hurts. As the lawyer began mapping out our legal strategy, an unexpected twist emerged. In gathering proof of Elsie's actions, I uncovered a paper trail suggesting far more insidious misdeeds. It appears your mother-in-law has been siphoning funds from your joint accounts for quite some time, the lawyer revealed, sliding a stack of incriminating bank statements across her desk. My heart pounded as I scanned the documents, seeing figure after figure that couldn't be explained away as mere loans or financial troubles. Rowena had been systematically draining our life savings for years, using my husband's blind loyalty as cover. White-hot anger coursed through my veins as the full scope of her manipulation came into focus. That conniving, lying. Take a breath, the lawyer cautioned. This is a positive development for our case. With this evidence, we can not only pursue Elsie for the intellectual property theft, but also go after your mother-in-law for fraud and financial exploitation. A grim satisfaction settled over me. Finally, I had the ammunition I needed to bring these two leeches to their knees and reclaim what was rightfully mine. Do it, I said, my voice steely with resolve. Take them for everything they've got. Over the next few weeks, the lawyer and I worked tirelessly, building an airtight case against Elsie and Rowena. Every instance of theft, deception, and violation was meticulously documented and added to the growing pile of damning evidence. As the court date loomed closer, I could practically taste the sweet vengeance that awaited them. No more being the docile victim, no more turning the other cheek. It was time to unleash the full force of karmic retribution. Carter, bless his oblivious heart, remained largely in the dark about the extent of my actions. A part of me felt a twinge of guilt for going behind his back, but his willful ignorance had enabled this toxic cycle for far too long. This was something I had to do alone. Finally, the day arrived. I strode into the courthouse, my head held high, ready to watch the house of lies Rowena and Elsie had built come crumbling down around them. As they were led into the courtroom, their expressions shifted from nonchalant to ashen-faced when they locked eyes with me, and the mountain of evidence awaiting them. I settled into my seat, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. The time for talking was over. Now, it was time for them to face the consequences. The day of reckoning finally arrived in the form of a family gathering Carter had naively organized to clear the air. Little did he know, I had something far more explosive in store. As relatives and close friends trickled into our backyard, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Rowena and Elsie huddled together, shooting me venomous looks, while Carter made awkward small talk, oblivious to the storm brewing. When the last guests had arrived, I cleared my throat and stepped forward, leveling Rowena and Elsie with an icy glare. I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, I announced, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. The theft, the lies, the utter disrespect you two have shown me and my household, Rowena scoffed. Here we go again with the hysterics. Can't we just enjoy a nice family get-together? Hysterics? I echoed with a bitter laugh. You want to talk hysterics? How about the fact that you've been bleeding my husband dry for years to fund your sickening spending habits? A hush fell over the crowd as I whipped out the incriminating stack of bank statements, slamming them down on the patio table with a resonant thud. Or better yet, how about the fact that your precious daughter stole my intellectual property and tried to off my work as her own? Elsie paled, suddenly finding great interest in studying her shoes. Rowena opened her mouth, no doubt to spew more lies and deflections, but I cut her off with a raised hand. Save it. I have proof of every single underhanded, deceitful thing you two frauds have pulled. I turned to Carter, my heart aching at the shell-shocked expression on his face. I'm sorry, babe, But you need to see this. One by one, I laid out the damning evidence. Bank statements, emails, contracts, everything the lawyer and I had meticulously compiled to expose their greed and treachery. With each new revelation, the murmurs and gasps from the crowd grew louder. By the time I was finished, the backyard had fallen into a stunned silence, all eyes boring into Rowena and Elsie with a mixture of shock and disgust. Carter looked like he'd been sucker-punched, his eyes glistening with unshed tears of betrayal. "Mom, Elsie, is this true? Have you really been lying and stealing from us this whole time?" For once, Rowena was at a loss for words, her mouth opening and closing like a gasping fish. Elsie simply stared at the ground, shoulders slumped in shame. The silence stretched on, suffocating, until finally Carter found his voice, a raw, guttural sound that cut straight to my core. "Get out." The words hung in the air, heavy as a death sentence. Rowena's head snapped up, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Carter, honey, you can't mean—" "I said get out," he roared, his face contorted with a rage I'd never witnessed. "Both of you. I don't ever want to see your faces again, after the way you've disgraced this family." As Rowena and Elsie beat a hasty retreat, their wails of protest drowned out by the din of scathing rebukes from the crowd, I let out a long, shuddering breath. It was finally over. The web of lies and manipulation had been shredded, laid bare for all to see. And in that moment, as Carter pulled me into a fierce embrace, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together, free from the toxic shackles of the past. The fallout from exposing Rowena and Elsie's despicable actions was swift and uncompromising. Within days, the lawyer had them served with an ironclad legal case, leaving them with no choice but to comply. "They'll be forced to repay every cent they stole, plus damages," the lawyer assured me with grim satisfaction. "And Elsie will have to issue a public apology for the intellectual property theft against your company." A weight lifted off my shoulders as I realized their reign of manipulation and entitlement was truly coming to an end. Carter, newly emboldened after the shocking revelations, stood firmly by my side. "I can't believe I let them take advantage of us for so long," he said, shame and anger warring in his voice. "But not anymore. We're going to make things right." With Rowena and Elsie legally bound to make amends, a strange sense of peace washed over me. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe freely, unburdened by their toxic presence and disrespect. In the weeks that followed, the restitution payments began trickling in, allowing Carter and I to slowly rebuild our plundered savings. And true to the court order, Elsie was forced to issue a humiliating public statement, apologizing for her unprofessional actions and acknowledging the theft of my intellectual property. As satisfying as it was to watch her swallow her pride, what mattered most was that I could finally move forward without that dark cloud hanging over my career. With Carter's renewed support, I took a deep breath and set to work realizing a long-held dream, launching my own design studio. The early days were a whirlwind of hassles and headaches, but I poured every ounce of passion into making the new venture a success, a metaphorical raised middle finger to Rowena and Elsie's attempts to derail me. As clients slowly trickled in, drawn by my talent and determination, I found myself truly thriving for the first time in years. No more walking on eggshells, no more snide comments or disrespect. This was my kingdom, my own little slice of hard-earned independence. Carter rallied behind me every step of the way, having seen firsthand the resilience and strength that guided me through our family's darkest chapter. In many ways, the experience had remolded our relationship into something deeper, more unbreakable than ever before. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured one night as we relaxed on the patio, glasses of wine in hand. "After everything you've been through, you still came out on top." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the wine. "We came out on top, you and me, babe. We're an unstoppable team now." As the months rolled by and my studio's success continued to soar, that hard-won victory only grew sweeter. The cherry on top came when I received news that I'd been nominated for a prestigious design award, a testament to my talent and professionalism that Rowena and Elsie could never tarnish. The night of the ceremony, I walked the red carpet in a stunning gown, Carter beaming proudly by my side. And when they called my name as the winner, I gracefully accepted the award, basking in the roar of the crowd. In that shining moment of triumph, I knew one thing with crystal clear certainty. The dark days of being trampled and disrespected were firmly behind me. This was the beginning of a new era, one of success and empowerment on my own terms. No more disturbances. Only the sweet taste of victory well earned. You think a couple of spreadsheets make you a CEO? Ray's sneer cut through the air like a knife. I cringed, trying to soothe Benny's wailing cries as his tiny body squirmed in my arms. My husband's words stung, but I forced a tight-lipped smile. It's just freelance work, honey. You know that. Ray scoffed, his eyes rolling as he turned away. Right. Playing pretend while the rest of us handle the real work. I bit my tongue, rocking Benny gently until his cries subsided. This wasn't the first time Ray had belittled my career change, but each jab chipped away at my confidence a little more. After Benny's birth, I'd transitioned from my finance manager role to freelance consulting, thinking it would give me more flexibility. But Ray and his parents, who we'd moved in with to save money, treated my work like a cute little hobby. Marla, dear, could you help me with lunch? Helen's voice drifted in from the kitchen, her tone saccharine but laced with expectation. I suppressed a sigh, shifting Benny to my hip as I headed towards her voice. Ray's mother had been increasingly demanding of my time and energy, as if my income didn't already cover most of our living expenses. But Ray would never admit that. He loved playing the provider, even as he secretly drained our joint savings without my knowledge. I plastered on a smile as I entered the kitchen. Of course, Helen. What can I do? Her eyes narrowed, zeroing in on Benny. Well, for starters, you can stop coddling that child. He'll never learn independence. I opened my mouth, but the retort died on my lips. Arguing never ended well. As I shifted Benny to his playpen, my laptop caught my eye, a reminder of the work awaiting me amidst the constant demands and criticisms. For now, I could only grit my teeth and power through, one spreadsheet at a time. The shrill ringing of the doorbell jolted me from my work. I glanced at the clock, 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, which could only mean one thing. I'll get it, Helen called out, her tone laced with false sweetness. Seconds later, her voice rang out again. Marla, get in here. I sighed, reluctantly leaving my laptop behind as I made my way to the living room. Helen stood with her hands on her hips, eyes narrowed at me. Yes, Helen? I fought to keep my tone even. You can't honestly expect me to handle this housework all by myself, she tutted, waving a dismissive hand. We need your help. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died in my throat. Arguing would only prolong the inevitable lecture. Of course, I conceded through gritted teeth. Just give me a minute to save my files. Oh, pish-posh, Helen scoffed. That silly little project can wait. This is a real job that needs doing. She shoved a feather duster into my hands, leaving me no choice but to comply or risk another tongue-lashing. For the next 2 hours, I dusted, vacuumed, and scrubbed every inch of the living space, my freelance work a distant afterthought. All the while, Helen hovered nearby, critiquing my every move. No, you're doing it all wrong, she'd snatching the cleaning supplies from my hands to demonstrate her proper technique. By the time Ray returned home from the office, I was thoroughly exhausted and utterly defeated. There's my hard-working wife, he greeted me with a patronizing grin, ruffling my hair like I was a child. I managed a weak smile, my jaw clenched to keep the biting retort at bay. It wasn't until later that night, after reviewing my invoices and payments, that the truth finally hit me. My freelance income easily covered our rent, utilities, and most of our living expenses. Ray's providing was little more than a facade, one he'd been propagating by siphoning money from our joint accounts into a separate slush fund. As I stared at the damning numbers, my vision blurred with angry tears. All this time, I'd been treated like a failure, when in reality, it was my husband who was the fraud. The realization left me reeling, but also kindled a newfound sense of determination. If Ray wanted to play financial games, then I'd have to start playing by his rules too. Starting tonight, I vowed, keeping a separate ledger of my own, one that would ensure I always held the upper hand. The air was thick with tension as we gathered around the dinner table for Benny's 5th birthday. Helen had insisted on cooking an elaborate meal, despite my protests that Benny would be happier with pizza and cake. A home-cooked feast is a family tradition, she'd snapped, leaving no room for argument. As we settled in our seats, Benny's eyes lit up at the sight of his favorite chocolate cake, complete with 5 candles. "Make a wish, sweetie," I encouraged with a smile, trying to inject some levity into the stifling atmosphere. Before Benny could respond, Helen cut in with a disapproving cluck of her tongue. "He's far too old for such childish nonsense, Marla. It's high time you started parenting him properly." I felt the heat rising in my cheeks, but bit back the retort burning on my lips. Arguing would only make things worse. Ray, ever the oblivious bystander, simply shrugged and dug into his plate. "Mom knows best," he mumbled around a mouthful of food. The meal crawled by in agonizing silence, punctuated only by Helen's periodic critiques of my mothering skills and life choices. "You really ought to find a proper job, dear. This little freelancing hobby of yours is hardly setting a good example for Benny." I clenched my fists beneath the table, nails digging into my palms as I struggled to maintain my composure. "And speaking of examples," Helen continued, her gaze sweeping over me with disdain, "when was the last time you bothered with your appearance? You're starting to look quite frumpy." The words stung like a slap to the face, and I felt hot tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Before I could respond, Ray cut in with a dismissive chuckle. "Aw, lay off her, Mom. Marla's just trying her best." His attempt at defending me only twisted the knife deeper. I wasn't a child needing coddling. I was his wife, his partner, being systematically torn down in our own home. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite nods as I struggled to hold myself together. It wasn't until I was alone in the bathroom, gripping the edges of the sink, that I finally allowed the anguished sobs to escape. As the tears streamed down my cheeks, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror, a hollow-eyed, exhausted shell of the confident woman I'd once been. In that moment, a painful realization crystallized. This toxic environment was slowly eroding my sense of self-worth, piece by piece. I had to find a way out, I resolved, swiping angrily at the tears, for Benny's sake, if not my own. But navigating an escape from Ray's web of control and deceit would take careful planning and an unshakable resolve that I wasn't sure I possessed. Not yet, at least. But as I stared into the mirror, my gaze hardening with newfound determination, I vowed that I would find that strength, no matter what it took. I hovered outside the den, my heart pounding as I strained to make out the hushed voices drifting through the cracked door. It was late, well past midnight, and I should have been asleep, but something had drawn me here instead. "Can't keep doing this, Ray," a woman's voice murmured, laced with exasperation. "She's going to find out eventually." My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the throaty tone. Kara, one of Ray's coworkers. "She's too caught up in her little fantasy world to notice." Ray scoffed, his words like a punch to the gut. "I've got everything under control." Under control? My mind raced, trying to make sense of their cryptic conversation. What was he hiding from me? "You're funneling money into a separate account," Kara persisted, her voice edged with disapproval. "That's fraud, Ray, not to mention the fact that you're lying to your wife about." Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Ray was lying to me about something big. A cold knot of dread formed in the pit of my stomach as the pieces began to fall into place. The secret accounts, the late nights at the office, the hushed phone calls. Was he having an affair? The thought was almost too painful to bear, but I knew in that moment that I couldn't ignore the glaring truth any longer. I had to find out what was really going on. Over the next few days, I made it my mission to uncover every last detail of Ray's betrayal. I pored over bank statements, combed through his emails and browser history, and even went so far as to hire a private investigator to trail his movements. With each new revelation, the picture became clearer and more damning. Not only was Ray having an affair with Kara, but he'd been systematically draining our joint finances, squirreling away a sizable nest egg in preparation to leave me. The final straw came when I stumbled across a legal document outlining his plans to file for sole custody of Benny, using his financial control as leverage to paint me as an unfit mother. As I read those cold, calculated words, something inside me finally snapped. The fear, the self-doubt, the constant second-guessing, it all evaporated in an instant, replaced by a blazing fury. I was done being the victim. It was time to fight back. That night, as Ray slept beside me, oblivious to the storm brewing, I began meticulously compiling every shred of evidence I'd gathered, every canceled check, every damning email, every incriminating photograph. By morning's light, I would have an airtight case to destroy his carefully constructed web of lies, and when I did, I vowed, glaring at his peacefully slumbering form, there would be no mercy. Ray was about to learn that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned and betrayed. The manila folder felt heavy in my hands, weighed down by the damning evidence it contained. Evidence of Ray's betrayal, his lies, his utter disregard for me and our family. I took a steadying breath, squaring my shoulders as I strode into the living room where Ray sat, obliviously watching TV. "We need to talk," I stated, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. He glanced up, brow furrowed in confusion. "What's up, babe?" The endearment made my skin crawl, but I pressed on. "I know about the affair, Ray, and the money you've been stealing from our accounts." His face paled, eyes widening in something akin to fear, an expression I'd never seen from him before. "What are you talking about?" Rather than answering, I tossed the folder onto the coffee table, its contents spilling out in a damning array of bank statements, emails, and photographs. "This is what I'm talking about," I said coolly, crossing my arms over my chest. "The proof of your lies and betrayal." For a long moment he simply gaped at the incriminating evidence, mouth working soundlessly. Then, like a switch being flipped, his expression hardened into a sneer. "You've been spying on me?" he accused, voice dripping with disdain. "Jesus, Marla, I knew you were pathetic, but I didn't think you'd stoop this low." His words lashed out like a physical blow, but I refused to flinch. Not this time. "Save it, Ray," I shot back, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "I know all about your little scheme, how you were planning to leave me and take Benny, using your financial control to paint me as an unfit mother." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked by a derisive snort. "So what if I was? You're barely even a wife, let alone a decent mother, always working on those stupid spreadsheets instead of taking care of your family." White-hot fury blazed through me at his callous dismissal of my career, my worth. But even worse was the realization that this blatant disrespect and emotional manipulation had been the norm in our marriage for far too long. No more. "Get out," I said, the words clipped and laced with venom. Ray blinked, clearly taken aback. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I repeated, lifting my chin defiantly. "Get your shit and get out of my house. This marriage is over." For a beat, he seemed too stunned to react. Then his expression contorted into an ugly snarl. "Your house?" he sneered. "In case you've forgotten, I'm the one who's been stealing from our accounts to fund your little slush fund?" I cut him off, my voice rising in a burst of vindicated rage. "Who's been lying and cheating and manipulating me at every turn?" I stalked towards him, eyes blazing. "Newsflash, Ray, that money you've been squirreling away, the down payment for this place, it all came from my freelance income that you mocked so freely." Watching the realization wash over his features, I felt a surge of vicious satisfaction. The tables had well and truly turned. "So get out," I repeated, jabbing a finger towards the door, "before I call the police and have you removed for trespassing on my property." For once, Ray seemed utterly speechless, his mouth working soundlessly as the fight drained from his eyes. In that moment, as I watched my husband, my tormentor, deflate into a sullen, defeated heap, I knew I'd finally broken free from his toxic chains. The storm had passed, and I was still standing, battered but unbroken. And as I surveyed the wreckage of our marriage, a strange sense of peace washed over me. It was finally over. I'd survived the tempest, and I would be damned if I ever allowed another man to make me feel so small again. The air was thick with tension as I faced Ray's parents in their den, the folder of evidence clutched tightly in my hands. After kicking Ray out, I knew I had to strike while the iron was hot. "What's this all about, dear?" Helen asked, her tone simpering but laced with suspicion. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. "It's about your son and the lies he's been telling us." Steve frowned, exchanging a look with his wife. "Now, Marla, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for whatever this is about." "Is there?" I challenged, tossing the folder onto the coffee table. "Take a look for yourselves." They leafed through the contents in silence, the bank statements, emails, photos, all painting a damning picture of Ray's deceit and infidelity. As the truth sank in, Helen's face contorted with rage. "That ungrateful little worm," she spat. "How dare he betray this family like that?" I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction at her outrage. After years of belittling and criticism, it was almost vindicating to see the tables turned. "You knew about his affairs, his secret accounts?" Steve asked, dumbfounded. I shook my head. "Not until recently. Turns out Ray's been funneling money from our joint accounts into a separate slush fund, all while cheating on me with some woman from his office." That lying, sniveling... Helen's rant dissolved into a string of curses, her face mottled with fury. Steve simply stared at me, agape. "Marla, we had no idea. You have to believe us." For the first time, I detected a glimmer of sincerity in his voice, a recognition of how badly they'd misjudged the situation. The years of overlooking Ray's misdeeds while treating me like a burden. I schooled my features into a mask of cool indifference. "Well, now you know. I'm filing for divorce first thing tomorrow and going after full custody of Benny." Helen's eyes widened in alarm. "Now, let's not be hasty, dear. Ray's still your husband, the father of your child. Surely we can work through this as a family." I barked out a harsh laugh. "A family? You two have done nothing but undermine me and treat me like a failure since the day we moved in here, all while your precious son was lying and stealing from me." Shaking my head in disgust, I turned to leave. No, this marriage is over. And if Ray tries to fight me on custody, I'll make sure the court sees every last piece of evidence of what a lying, cheating scumbag he really is. Steve opened his mouth, perhaps to argue, but I cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Save it. I'm done being the fool you always thought I was. From now on, I'm playing by my own rules." As I strode out, my head held high, I felt an unfamiliar sense of power coursing through me. For years, I'd allowed myself to be cowed and controlled, first by Ray, then by his overbearing parents. But not anymore. The shackles were off, the power dynamic irrevocably shattered. Ray's world was about to come crashing down around him, I vowed, allowing myself a vindicated smirk. Just like he'd brought ruin upon our marriage. And this time, there would be no absolution, no chance for his redemption in my eyes. He'd made his bed, and now he could lie in it, alone and disgraced, just as he deserved. The slam of the courtroom door punctuated my exit, the sound reverberating through the tense silence like a judge's gavel. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile as I strode down the marbled hallway, Ray's stunned face etched into my mind. Filing for divorce had been the easy part. Gathering evidence of his infidelity and financial crimes painted him as the clear villain. But custody of Benny? That had required a defter touch. I'd come armed with a meticulous paper trail, documenting how my freelance income had not only covered our living expenses, but also the down payment on the duplex Ray's parents owned. With cold, hard facts, I systematically dismantled his claims of being the family's sole provider. The final blow had been presenting proof of his plans to take Benny and use his financial status to manipulate the custody arrangement. As the words left my mouth, I saw the blood drain from Ray's face, that cocky arrogance evaporating in an instant. He knew, in that moment, that he'd lost, that I'd uncovered every last secret, every sordid detail of his betrayal, and wielded it like a blade to cut him down. By the time the judge rendered her decision, it was almost anticlimactic. Full custody to me, with strict limitations on Ray's visitation rights pending review, a freeze on all our joint assets until the financial crimes could be properly investigated. And then, the piece de resistance. My legal claim to the duplex, built on the foundation of my income that Ray had so arrogantly dismissed as playing pretend. I could hardly contain my glee as the judge ruled in my favor, awarding me not just the property, but the right to initiate its sale and division of assets. A fair judgment, she declared, considering the extent of Ray's deceit. By the time I exited that courtroom, flushed with victory, I was already weighing my options for the next chapter. A fresh start, just me and Benny, far away from the toxic tether of Ray and his enablers. Perhaps a cozy little house, I mused, reveling in the fantasy. A place where I could finally spread my wings as a mother and a professional without constant criticism and undermining. Benny would thrive in a stable, loving environment unburdened by his father's failings, and Ray, well, he could keep wallowing in the ruins of his shattered life, I decided with a twist of dark satisfaction. Let him suffer the consequences of his entitlement and arrogance. My path was clear now, brilliant and unobstructed by his looming shadow. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, my lungs filling with the invigorating air of liberation. As I climbed into my car and pulled away from the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes sparkled with renewed determination, my shoulders straightened with a sense of regained power. Gone was the shrinking Violet who'd allowed herself to be cowed and controlled. In her place stood a phoenix reborn from the ashes of betrayal, stronger, wiser, and utterly unstoppable in the pursuit of the life she deserved. This was only the beginning, I vowed, hands tightening on the steering wheel. The first delicious taste of the reckoning still to come, and God help anyone who dared stand in my way. The realtor's eyes widened as I named my price for the duplex. "Are you certain, Miss Shore? That's quite a significant markup from the market value." I leveled her with an icy stare. "I'm well aware of the property's worth, but I'm not selling based on market estimates. I'm pricing it according to what I put into that place." The woman opened her mouth, perhaps to argue, but I silenced her with a raised hand. Every cent of that down payment came from my own earnings that my ex-husband continually belittled as playing pretend, not to mention all the mortgage payments and expenses I covered with my freelance income. Understanding dawned on her face as the pieces fell into place. "I see. So this is about principle," I stated flatly. "Ray thought he could lie, cheat, and steal from me with impunity. This sale proves him wrong, and ensures I get my fair share of the profits from his shady investments." The realtor nodded slowly. "Well, when you put it that way, I'll list it at your asking price, Miss Shore. Just be prepared for a lengthier sale process." "Money's no issue," I assured her with a tight smile. "I can afford to wait for the right buyer to meet my terms." As she bustled off to handle the paperwork, I settled onto the couch, allowing my gaze to sweep over the all-too-familiar living room. For years, this place had represented my shattered dreams, a constant, looming reminder of how little control I'd had over my own life and finances. But now, a twisted sense of vindication coiled in my chest as I drank in the sight. This duplex, this monument to my suffering, was about to become the cornerstone of my renaissance. With Ray's duplicity fully exposed and our assets frozen, the sale proceeds from this property would be my defiantly claimed victory spoils. My hard-earned nest egg to secure a prosperous future for me and Benny, well beyond the reach of any other snake's grip. The thought made me swell with grim satisfaction. Ray's carefully constructed facade of success and loyalty was already beginning to crumble around him in the wake of the divorce proceedings. Just last week, I'd caught wind of his colleagues whispering about his sudden leave of absence from the firm. I could only imagine the indignities he was suffering. The confused clients, the speculative gossip, the utter humiliation of having his sordid misdeeds laid bare before his professional peers. And to think this was only the beginning of his hard-earned penance, a mere preview of the reckoning still to come. As for his parents, well, from what I'd heard through the grapevine, they were less than pleased with their prodigal son's transgressions. The schadenfreude I felt at their disappointment was admittedly petty, but no less savored for its pettiness. Let them wallow in Ray's disgrace, I decided with a twisted smirk. He was their shining example of manhood for so long, after all. Now he could serve as a cautionary tale of karmic justice. A muffled thump from the hallway jolted me from my reverie, announcing Benny's return home from day camp. A second later, his tousled head poked around the corner, cherubic face wreathed in an infectious grin. "Mommy, you'll never guess what I did today." As he launched into a breathless retelling of his latest adventures, I felt the roiling storm of bitterness within me ease, replaced by a surging wave of pure, giddy relief. This was it, the light at the end of the tunnel I'd been straining towards for so long. The promise of a fresh start, a second chance at building the life I deserved. All secured through my own resilience and determination. No more walking on eggshells, no more tolerating disrespect or dismissal. From here on out, I vowed silently, gathering Benny into a fierce embrace, we would write our own story on our terms. And this time, there would be no manipulative villains dictating the plot. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves as I faced the ungrateful stares of my son Jeff and his wife Emily. The air was thick with tension, and the words they had just uttered felt like a slap across my face. "Jeff, Emily, I never thought you'd treat me like this over a loan. I gave you $50,000 for my granddaughter's education, not for you to throw it away," I exclaimed, my voice trembling with disappointment and disbelief. Jeff scoffed, his arms folded defiantly across his chest. "We don't need to explain ourselves to you, Mom. We're cutting ties, and don't expect any help from us when you're old." Emily nodded in agreement, her lips curled into a smug smile that sent shivers down my spine. "That's right, Helen. We're done playing this charade of a happy family." I felt my heart sink as their words sank in. After all the sacrifices I had made for them, this was how they chose to repay me? Anger bubbled up inside me, but I tried to remain calm. "Gladly, don't come crying to me when you realize your mistake." With those parting words, I turned and walked away, my steps heavy with the weight of their betrayal. As I made my way home, memories of our once happy family flooded my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder where it all went wrong. I had always been a devoted mother, putting my son's needs before my own. After a successful career as a nurse, I had retired with a comfortable nest egg, which I was more than willing to share with Jeff and his family. But little did I know that my generosity would be met with such blatant disrespect and manipulation. As I settled into my chair, I thought back to the days when Jeff was just a young boy, full of dreams and ambition. I had worked tirelessly to provide him with the best education, instilling in him the values of hard work and integrity. And when he met Emily, a charismatic woman from an affluent family, I had welcomed her with open arms, never suspecting the depths of her deceit. As I sat in the dimly lit living room, my mind wandered back to the days when Frank and I were just starting our lives together. Those were simpler times, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. Frank was the love of my life, a kind and gentle soul who had stolen my heart from the moment we met. We had met during my nursing training, and his warm smile and unwavering support had been my rock through the most challenging times. I reminisced about our wedding day, the way his eyes had sparkled with joy as we exchanged our vows, promising to love and cherish each other until death did us part. Little did we know then that our love would be tested in ways we could never have imagined. As the years passed, our love only grew stronger. We welcomed our son Jeff into the world, and from the moment I held him in my arms, I knew that my life had taken on a new meaning. Frank and I poured every ounce of our love and energy into raising Jeff, ensuring that he had every opportunity to thrive. And thrive he did. Jeff was a bright child, excelling in his studies and showing a keen intellect that filled us with pride. We supported his dreams, encouraging him to pursue his passions and never lose sight of his ambitions. When Jeff graduated from college with top honors, we couldn't have been more proud. He had landed a coveted job at a prestigious firm, and we believed that his future was secure. It was around this time that he met Emily, a woman who seemed to have it all: beauty, charm, and a wealthy family background. At first, Emily appeared kind and sincere, expressing a genuine interest in our family and our values. She would shower us with affection, referring to us as her second parents, and promising to cherish the bond we shared. Little did we know that her true intentions were far more sinister. As the years went by, we began to notice subtle changes in Jeff and Emily's behavior. Their visits became more frequent, but instead of the warm embraces we were accustomed to, they were often accompanied by requests for financial assistance. "Mom, Dad, you know how much we love you," Emily would say, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We could really use some help with the mortgage this month. Just a small loan, and we'll pay you back as soon as we can." Blinded by our love and desire to support our son, we obliged time and time again. We dipped into our savings, convinced that we were helping them through a rough patch, never realizing that we were being manipulated by masters of deceit. As the years wore on, the requests became more frequent, and the amounts grew larger. We found ourselves stretching our resources thin, sacrificing our own comforts to ensure that Jeff and Emily had everything they desired. But the more we gave, the more they demanded, and the more distant they became. It was as if our love and generosity were being exploited, twisted into a sick game of manipulation and betrayal. Little did we know that the true extent of their deception was yet to be revealed, and the consequences would shake the very foundations of our family. As the years passed, the cracks in Jeff and Emily's facade became increasingly difficult to ignore. What had once been a loving, supportive relationship had devolved into a twisted game of manipulation and deceit. Their visits to our home became more frequent, each one accompanied by a new request for financial assistance. "Mom, Dad, we're so grateful for everything you've done for us," Emily would croon, her saccharine tone masking the underlying manipulation. At first, we were happy to help, believing that they were simply going through a rough patch. We dipped into our savings, convinced that our sacrifices were an investment in our family's future. But as time went on, the requests grew larger and our resources dwindled. "Jeff, Emily, we've given you everything we can," I finally mustered the courage to say one day. "We're struggling to make ends meet ourselves." Jeff's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing as he regarded me with disdain. "What do you mean you can't help us? You're our parents. It's your duty to support us." Emily nodded in agreement, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the armrest of the chair. "Really, Helen, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" Their words stung, piercing my heart like 1,000 needles. I wanted to believe that they truly cared for us, that their love and gratitude were genuine. But as the months wore on, their true colors began to show. Frank and I found ourselves sacrificing our own comforts to appease their endless demands. We skipped vacations, delayed home repairs, and even went without essentials, all in the hopes of maintaining peace and keeping our family together. But no matter how much we gave, it was never enough. "Mom, we're barely scraping by," Jeff would lament, his voice dripping with false despair. "I don't know how we're going to make it through this month." Yet, their lavish lifestyle told a different story. They flaunted designer clothing, expensive cars, and extravagant vacations, all while claiming financial hardship. It was a never-ending cycle of manipulation and emotional blackmail, and I found myself trapped, unable to escape the suffocating grip of their greed. One day, as I struggled to pay my utility bills, I made the decision to confront Jeff about the discrepancy between their claims of financial woes and their opulent lifestyle. "Jeff, I need your help," I pleaded, my voice trembling with desperation. "I can't afford to pay my bills this month." He regarded me with a cold, dismissive stare, his lips curling into a sneer. "You're asking me for money? Mom, Emily and I are barely making ends meet as it is. We can't afford to support you, too." His words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me reeling in disbelief. How could the son I had raised, the child I had loved and nurtured, be so callous and cruel? It was in that moment that the scales fell from my eyes, and I saw Jeff and Emily for who they truly were. Manipulative, selfish individuals who cared only for their own gain. As I watched them drive away in their luxury sedan, my heart heavy with the weight of their betrayal, I knew that something had to be done. I could no longer allow them to take advantage of my love and generosity. It was time to take a stand, to expose their lies and hold them accountable for their actions. And as I formulated my plan, a newfound sense of determination began to take root within me. They had underestimated me, thinking that I was nothing more than a feeble old woman to be exploited and discarded. But they were in for a rude awakening, for I was not one to be trifled with. The stage was set for a final showdown, and I intended to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The manipulation and deceit only intensified with the arrival of Emily's pregnancy. I had been overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother, eager to shower my grandchild with love and affection. "Mom, we're going to need your help more than ever," Emily had cooed, her eyes glistening with false sincerity. "You know how much it means to us to have your support." Foolishly, I fell for her act, offering to assist with baby supplies and childcare, convinced that my sacrifices were an investment in our family's future. Little did I know that my generosity would be exploited to the fullest extent as Emily and Jeff embarked on a relentless campaign of emotional and financial manipulation. "Grandma, we're so grateful for everything you do," Emily would croon, while simultaneously handing me a list of expensive baby items to purchase. I found myself drowning in a sea of pacifiers, formula, and designer onesies, my savings dwindling with each passing day. But the true depths of their selfishness became apparent when our precious granddaughter, Lily, arrived. Emily insisted that I take on the role of full-time babysitter, claiming that they couldn't afford the exorbitant costs of daycare. "It's only temporary, Mom," Jeff would assure me, his words dripping with false promises. "Once we get back on our feet, we'll take care of everything." Yet, as the months turned into years, my responsibilities only grew. I found myself consumed by a never-ending cycle of diaper changes, feedings, and playtime, all while Emily and Jeff pursued their lavish lifestyle, seemingly oblivious to my sacrifices. "We're just so blessed to have you, Helen," Emily would gush, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against her designer handbag. "We don't know what we'd do without you." Their words were like poison, seeping into my heart and clouding my judgment. I convinced myself that my role was essential, that my presence was a vital component in Lily's upbringing. But as the years passed, the truth became increasingly difficult to ignore. Emily and Jeff's behavior grew more callous, their disregard for my well-being more apparent with each passing day. "Mom, can you watch Lily this weekend?" Jeff would demand, without so much as a hint of gratitude. "Emily and I have plans." And so I would dutifully comply, sacrificing my own social engagements and personal time to cater to their whims. It was a twisted dance of manipulation, with Emily and Jeff leading the steps and me following obediently, blinded by the love I held for my family. Yet beneath the surface, a simmering resentment began to take root. I found myself questioning their motives, their actions, and the very foundation upon which our relationship was built. But it wasn't until Lily, now a perceptive young girl of 15, confided in me that the true extent of their betrayal was revealed. "Grandma," she whispered, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I overheard Mom and Dad talking. They've been getting money from Grandpa and Grandma Price, too, for my school fees." The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks, shattering the carefully constructed facade of lies and deceit that Jeff and Emily had so skillfully crafted. Suddenly, everything made sense. The lavish lifestyle, the constant demands for financial assistance, the dismissive attitude towards my own struggles. They had been playing me like a fiddle, manipulating my love and devotion for their own selfish gain, all while accepting handouts from Emily's wealthy parents. As the pieces fell into place, a newfound determination took hold. I would no longer be a pawn in their twisted game. It was time to confront them, to expose their lies, and hold them accountable for their actions. And this time, there would be no room for forgiveness or compromise. They had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. Lily's revelation was the catalyst that set my plan in motion. For years, I had been blinded by love and loyalty, allowing myself to be manipulated and taken advantage of by my own flesh and blood. But no more. As I sat across from Lily, her innocent eyes brimming with tears, I knew that the time for action had come. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "I'm going to handle this." Over the next few days, I meticulously gathered evidence of Jeff and Emily's deception. Bank statements, receipts, and even overheard conversations. I left no stone unturned in my quest to expose their lies. Armed with an arsenal of proof, I summoned the courage to confront them head-on. "Jeff, Emily," I began, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and determination. "I know everything." Their reactions were a study in contrasts. Jeff's face paled, his eyes widening with a flicker of fear, while Emily simply arched a perfectly groomed eyebrow, her expression one of cool indifference. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Jeff stammered, his attempt at nonchalance failing miserably. "Don't play dumb with me," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I know about the money you've been taking from Emily's parents. I know about your job at her family's company, and I know that you've been lying to me all this time about your financial situation." Emily let out a derisive laugh, her perfectly painted lips curling into a sneer. "So what if we did? It's none of your business how we manage our finances." "None of my business," I echoed, my voice rising in disbelief. "What about the $50,000 I gave you for Lily's education? What did you do with that money?" Jeff shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. We needed it for other expenses, but we had every intention of paying you back." Lies, I spat, slamming my fist on the table, causing them both to flinch. You've been taking advantage of me from the start, using me for my money, my time, my love, all while living the high life behind my back. Emily's eyes narrowed, her veneer of composure cracking. You're just a bitter old woman who can't accept that her son has moved on with his life. We don't owe you anything. Her words stung, but I refused to back down. You're right, Emily, I said, my voice low and steady. You don't owe me anything, because as of this moment, we're done. Our relationship is over. Jeff's face contorted in a mixture of shock and anger. You can't be serious, Mom. We're family. Family? I scoffed. You've made it abundantly clear that you don't care about family. All you care about is money and status. Well, I'm not going to be a part of your charade anymore. With a heavy heart, I laid out the ultimatum. Either you come clean and make amends, or I'm cutting you off. No more money, no more favors, no more anything. And if you think you can manipulate your way back into my life, think again. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. Jeff and Emily exchanged a quick glance, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice dripping with contempt. Fine. Have it your way, Helen. We never needed you anyway. And with that, they turned and walked out of my life, leaving a trail of broken promises and shattered trust in their wake. As the door slammed shut behind them, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The weight of their betrayal had been lifted, and for the first time in years I was free from their manipulative grip. But my journey was far from over. There was still one more piece of the puzzle to put into place, one final act of defiance that would ensure my revenge was complete. As I dialed the number of my lawyer, a small smile tugged at the corners of my lips. Jeff and Emily thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming their way. The days following my confrontation with Jeff and Emily were a whirlwind of emotions. I had finally found the strength to stand up to their manipulation, but the weight of their betrayal still hung heavy on my heart. As I sat in the quiet of my living room, surrounded by memories of happier times, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not allow their greed and selfishness to define my life. It was time to take back control and chart a new course, one that would bring justice and healing to our fractured family. The first step was to gather my allies. I reached out to my granddaughter, Lily, the one person who had stood by me through it all. Her eyes shone with admiration and respect as I laid out my plan. "Grandma, I'm with you all the way," she said, her voice resolute. "Mom and Dad have gone too far this time." With Lily's unwavering support, I felt emboldened to take the next step. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, a formidable woman named Claire, and presented her with the evidence I had collected over the years. "This is a clear case of financial exploitation and emotional abuse," Claire stated, her brow furrowed as she pored over the documents. "We have more than enough grounds to pursue legal action." The thought of taking my own son to court weighed heavily on my mind, but I knew it was the only way to hold him and Emily accountable for their actions. They had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. A few days later, I summoned Jeff and Emily to my home, this time with Claire by my side. As they entered the room, their expressions ranged from confusion to outright defiance. "What's going on, Mom?" Jeff demanded, his eyes narrowing as he took in the presence of my lawyer. "Lily told me everything," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You've been taking money from Emily's parents too and lying to me. What did you do with my $50,000? Emily's eyes flashed with fury, her perfectly painted lips curling into a sneer. "It's none of your business how we use our funds. Your loan? It's gone. Accept it." I could feel the anger bubbling within me, but I refused to be baited. "You're right, it's over," I said, locking eyes with my son. "We're done here, but there's just one last thing." With a deep breath, I uttered the words I never thought I'd say. "I'm disowning you, Jeff, and I'm adopting Lily." The room erupted in chaos, with Jeff shouting and Emily hurling insults left and right. But through it all, I remained resolute, my mind focused on the future, a future without their toxicity and betrayal. As the dust settled, I turned to Lily, her eyes shining with a mixture of disbelief and hope. "I'm staying with Grandma," she declared, her voice unwavering. "You and Dad never cared about my interests, only what makes you look good." Jeff's face contorted with rage, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "You have no idea what you're doing, Lily," he spat, his words laced with venom. But Lily stood her ground, her chin raised defiantly. "She knows exactly what she's doing," I interjected, placing a protective arm around my granddaughter's shoulders. "We're going to court to make it official." The look of pure hatred that flashed across Emily's face would haunt me for years to come. But in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. I was taking back control of my life, my family, and my future. With Claire's guidance, we set the wheels in motion, forcing Jeff and Emily to sign legal documents disowning any rights to my estate and consenting to Lily's temporary guardianship under my care. As they stormed out of my home, their protests echoing in the night, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was no longer alone. Lily and I were a united front, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. And as for Jeff and Emily, they had made their choices, and now it was time to face the consequences. The days following my confrontation with Jeff and Emily were a whirlwind. With Lily by my side, I felt empowered to take the next steps in securing our future together, one free from their toxic influence. Claire, my steadfast lawyer, had been working tirelessly to ensure that every legal avenue was explored. "We need to make this official," she advised, her eyes reflecting a steely determination. "We can't leave any room for loopholes or challenges down the line." And so, with a heavy heart, I found myself once again in the presence of my estranged son and his wife. This time, however, the playing field was level, and I held all the cards. "What do you want now, Mom?" Jeff spat, his eyes narrowed with barely concealed contempt. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves before speaking. "We're here to finalize the disownment process," I stated, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. Emily scoffed, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. "You can't be serious? You're really going through with this charade?" "It's no charade," Claire interjected, her tone firm and unyielding. "Your mother has every legal right to disown you, Jeff, and to pursue guardianship of your daughter." Lily, who had been sitting silently by my side, finally spoke up. "I'm staying with Grandma," she declared, her eyes shining with a resolve far beyond her years. "You and Dad never cared about my interests, only what makes you look good." Jeff's face contorted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. "You have no idea what you're doing, Lily," he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. But Lily remained steadfast, her chin raised in defiance. "She knows exactly what she's doing," I said, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. "We're going to court to make it official." The legal documents were laid out before us, each page a testament to the fractured state of our once loving family. Jeff and Emily were forced to sign away their rights to my estate, their claim to Lily's future, and any lingering threads of control they thought they still possessed. As they scrawled their signatures, their movements jerky and filled with barely contained fury, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. This was the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that had been marred by deceit and betrayal. "This isn't over," Emily hissed, her eyes shooting daggers in my direction. "You'll regret this, Helen. Mark my words." But her threats fell on deaf ears. I had already endured the worst. The crushing realization that my own flesh and blood had exploited me for their own gain, trampling on the bonds of family and love. As they stormed out, their footsteps echoing like thunderclaps, I turned to Lily, her eyes shining with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We're going to get through this together." And in that moment, I knew that my words were true. With Lily by my side, a newfound strength had taken root within me, a strength born from the ashes of betrayal, tempered by the fires of hard-won wisdom. As we walked out of that room, hand in hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in years I was free. Free from the shackles of manipulation, free from the burden of misplaced loyalty. And as I looked into Lily's eyes, I saw a future filled with promise, a future where love and truth would triumph over greed and deceit. It was a future worth fighting for, and I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, head-on and without fear. For in the end, justice would prevail, not just for me, but for every person who had ever been wronged by those they trusted most. It was a lesson hard learned, but one that would shape the rest of my life and the lives of those I loved. The battle was far from over, but the first skirmish had been won. And as I looked ahead, I knew that no matter what obstacles arose, I would face them with the same determination and resilience that had carried me this far. Because in the end, revenge was not about inflicting harm or seeking retribution. It was about reclaiming what had been stolen: my dignity, my self-worth, and my right to live a life free from the shackles of manipulation and lies. And with that newfound strength, I knew that nothing could stand in my way. In the weeks that followed, the shockwaves of my actions rippled through our lives, causing unexpected consequences that even I couldn't have foreseen. It started with a frantic phone call from Emily's parents, their voices laced with confusion and anger. "Helen, what's going on? Jeff and Emily are telling us some outrageous story about you disowning them and taking custody of Lily." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "It's true," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I can no longer enable their manipulative and deceitful behavior." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a torrent of questions and accusations. But I stood firm, calmly explaining the years of financial exploitation and emotional abuse that had led me to this decision. As the truth unraveled, Emily's parents found themselves confronting a reality they had been blind to for far too long. Their precious daughter, the one they had doted on and showered with every privilege, was not the innocent victim she claimed to be. The fallout was swift and decisive. In a stunning turn of events, Emily's parents cut off all financial support, reclaiming the lavish home and assets they had bestowed upon their daughter and her husband. Suddenly, the tables had turned, and Jeff and Emily found themselves in the same precarious position they had so often claimed to be in. Struggling to make ends meet, their facade of wealth and status crumbling around them. But the consequences didn't end there. With the evidence I had provided, Jeff's position at Emily's family's company became increasingly tenuous. Whispers of his deceit and manipulation spread like wildfire, and before long he found himself demoted, his once promising career in shambles. As Lily and I watched from the sidelines, a strange sense of satisfaction washed over me. It wasn't joy at their misfortune, but rather a quiet vindication, a testament to the power of truth and the consequences of greed. "Grandma, are you sure this was the right thing to do?" Lily asked one evening, her brow furrowed with concern. I pulled her close, offering a reassuring embrace. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the hardest decisions are the ones that need to be made. Your parents made their choices, and now they have to live with the consequences." And live with them they did. As the months passed, Jeff and Emily's once lavish lifestyle became a distant memory, replaced by the harsh realities of financial strain and societal ostracization. But through it all, Lily and I remained steadfast, our bond strengthened by the trials we had endured together. We focused on building a new life, one founded on love, honesty, and a deep appreciation for the true meaning of family. With the support of my dear Frank, we showered Lily with the attention and guidance she had so desperately craved, nurturing her talents and ambitions without the weight of manipulation or false promises. As I watched her blossom into a confident, compassionate young woman, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was the true meaning of legacy, the passing of wisdom and strength from one generation to the next. And in those quiet moments, when the weight of the past threatened to overwhelm me, I would remind myself of the hard-won lessons I had learned. Trust must be earned, not blindly given. Loyalty is a two-way street, and those who exploit it forfeit their place in our lives. Most importantly, I learned that revenge is not about inflicting pain or seeking retribution. It is about reclaiming one's dignity, about standing up for what is right, even in the face of opposition from those we once held dear. As for Jeff and Emily, their paths diverged from ours, their lives a constant reminder of the consequences of their actions. But I harbored no ill will toward them, for they had taught me a valuable lesson, one that would guide me through the remainder of my days. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all, to move forward unburdened by the weight of their betrayal, and to live a life filled with love, laughter, and the knowledge that justice had prevailed. For in the aftermath of their deceit, a new family had been forged, one built on the foundations of truth, resilience, and an unbreakable bond that could never be shaken.
The moment Aunt Regina announced my layoff to the entire baby shower, I knew exactly how this afternoon would end. Not with tears, not with a scene, but with the satisfying click of a phone recording being stopped. My name is Layla, and I've spent the last 28 years being the family disappointment. Today, watching my aunt's perfectly lined lips curl into a smirk as she delivered the news of my professional failure to a room full of pastel-dressed women, I didn't flinch. I'd been expecting something like this since I walked through the door of her McMansion, carrying a gift I couldn't afford. "Oh, didn't everyone hear?" Regina's voice carried across the decorated living room. Our Layla was let go from her little design job. Such a shame, really. The room grew quiet, except for the clink of champagne glasses and my stepsister Mila's theatrical gasp. "Maybe she can babysit for Bridget when the baby comes," Mila chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "You know, since she'll have so much free time now." Polite laughter rippled through the room. I kept my face neutral, took a sip of sparkling water, and watched my cousin Bridget, the mom-to-be, pretend to look sympathetic while practically glowing with satisfaction. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I'd love to hear more about your charity work, Aunt Regina. The one you were telling me about last month, when you called asking for that loan?" Regina's smile flickered for just a second. "Oh, darling, what an imagination you have." "Layla's always been dramatic," my stepmother, Eva, cut in, patting my arm with cold fingers. "Remember when she refused to be in the family Christmas card last year?" I did remember. I also remembered the text message Eva sent afterward. "Your father and I think it's best if you skip the holiday dinner too. We wouldn't want any tension." The party continued around me like a pastel tornado of gift opening and forced enthusiasm. Bridget cooed over each onesie and baby blanket, while Regina orchestrated the whole show, making sure everyone could see just how generous and loving our family was. "Open mine next," Mila practically squealed, handing over an enormous box wrapped in designer paper. "Oh my God," Bridget gasped, pulling out a ridiculously expensive baby carrier. "This must have cost a fortune." "Only the best for my favourite cousin," Mila said, shooting me a look. I glanced down at my own modest gift, still sitting unopened in the corner. The handmade mobile had taken me weeks to design and craft, back when I still had access to my office's laser cutter. Now it just looked sad and small compared to everyone else's expensive offerings. "Layla, sweetie," Regina called out. "Didn't you bring something for the baby?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A notification from my banking app. Regina's loan request from last month was still pending. The same loan she now pretended never happened. I smiled. "Of course I did, Aunt Regina, but maybe we should wait to open it. After all, we wouldn't want to overshadow Mila's generous gift. Speaking of generosity, how is that investment partnership with Quincy working out?" Regina's face went white. My stepmother's head snapped up. Even Bridget stopped mid-unwrap. "I don't know what you're talking about," Regina said quickly. "Too quickly?" "No." I stood up, smoothing my thrift store dress. "That's strange, because I have the most interesting voicemail from you about it. Would everyone like to hear?" "Layla," my father's voice came from somewhere behind me, warning in his tone, always ready to defend everyone but me. I reached for my phone, watching Regina's perfectly manicured hands begin to shake. "What's wrong, Aunt Regina? You look like you've seen a ghost. Or maybe just your own karma." The room had gone completely silent now. Even the baby shower games coordinator looked uncomfortable. "I think," Regina said, her voice tight, "it might be best if you leave." I smiled, the same calm smile I'd been practicing for months. "Oh, I will. But first, let's talk about what really happened to my mother's estate after she died. Or should we start with the Charity Foundation's missing funds?" Regina lunged for her purse, probably reaching for her own phone, but I already had mine out, thumb hovering over the play button. "What they don't know," I thought, watching panic spread across my aunt's face, "is that I've been recording things too. And unlike them, I've got receipts for days." The best part about revenge, I was about to learn, isn't the planning or even the execution. It's that perfect moment when your tormentors realize they've finally, spectacularly, underestimated you for the last time. 2 months earlier, I sat at the kids' table during our monthly family brunch, pushing eggs around my plate while watching the real family pose for photos. The irony of being 28 and relegated to dining with tweens wasn't lost on me. "Layla, honey," Eva called out, her voice syrupy sweet. "Would you mind taking the family photo?" I looked up from my phone, where I'd been secretly recording the entire brunch. "Family photo? Sure. Should I be in it too?" "Oh." Ava exchanged glances with Regina. "Well, this is more for the immediate family. You understand?" Immediate family, right, because my father's second wife and her daughter somehow counted more than his actual child. I stood up, taking Ava's phone. Through the screen, I watched them arrange themselves. Dad in the centre, Eva clutching his arm, Mila beside them, Regina and Bridget completing the perfect family portrait. Click. "Beautiful," I said, handing the phone back. Really captured the authenticity. As they dispersed, I noticed Regina pulling my father aside, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. I pretended to be fascinated by my coffee cup, while hitting record on my phone again. "Hector, please," Regina was saying. "It's just a small loan. 10,000, 15, tops." "Regina, we've discussed this," Dad sighed. "The investment with Quincy was your choice. I warned you." "It wasn't just my choice," Regina hissed. "You know what's at stake here. If this gets out..." "Is everything okay?" Eva appeared, touching Dad's arm possessively. Regina straightened up, her face transforming into its usual mask of superiority. "Just discussing the charity gala next month. You'll be there, won't you, Layla?" I looked up, surprised to be acknowledged. "Wouldn't miss it, especially since you're partnering with that exciting new foundation. What was it called again?" Regina's smile tightened. "You wouldn't understand the complexities of philanthropic work, dear. Still doing your little computer drawings?" "Graphic design," I corrected. "And yes, still paying my own bills, unlike some people." Later that night, my phone lit up with a Facebook message from Regina. "Layla, I know we've had our differences, but I need your help. Can you loan me some money? It's an emergency. I'll pay you back double." I stared at the message, then played back the recording from brunch. The same aunt who'd been begging my father for cash was now hitting me up? Interesting. The next morning, my voicemail filled with Regina's increasingly desperate messages. "Layla, please call me back. I know you have savings. This is important. 10,000. That's all I need. Think of it as an investment. If you tell anyone about this, you'll regret it. We're family. We handle things internally. I saved every message, every text, each one more frantic than the last. Then I started digging into Regina's charity work. It didn't take long to find the connection to Quincy O'Connor, a man known for helping wealthy socialites hide money through fake charitable foundations. At work, I used my lunch break to create a detailed spreadsheet of dates, amounts, and suspicious transfers. But before I could dig deeper, my boss called me into her office. "Layla," she said, not meeting my eyes, "we need to discuss some organizational changes." That evening, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by printouts of Regina's financial records and my own termination papers. My phone buzzed with a text from Mila. "Heard about your job. Tough break. Maybe if you networked more instead of playing detective." I froze. How did she know? Unless... Another text arrived, this time from Regina. "I'd keep your little suspicions to yourself. You've never been part of this family. Don't try starting now." I leaned back, letting out a laugh that surprised even me. They thought they were threatening me. After years of exclusion, subtle jabs, and outright cruelty, they still didn't get it. I had nothing left to lose. I opened my laptop and started typing. "Dear Mr. O'Connor, I believe we have some mutual interest to discuss regarding the Young Family Foundation." My phone rang. Regina again. I let it go to voicemail, adding another recording to my growing collection. Let them think they'd scared me into silence. Let them believe I was just the family failure, too broke and powerless to fight back. I picked up my mother's old journal from my bedside table, running my fingers over her handwriting. Sometimes, she'd written, the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous. Mom had been right about so many things. And soon, very soon, everyone would know exactly how right she'd been about Regina. The HR director's voice was apologetic, but firm through my phone speaker. We're implementing company-wide restructuring, Layla. Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. I sat in my car, parked outside my father's house, listening to the details of my severance package. 2 weeks' pay, health insurance through the end of the month, the usual corporate goodbye gift. Of course, I said, my voice steady. I understand completely. What I understood was that Regina's reach extended further than I'd imagined. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. I walked up to my father's front door, determined to finally have an honest conversation with him. Eva answered instead, wearing her signature look of polite disdain. Layla, we weren't expecting you. Is Dad home? She gestured toward his study, where I found him buried in paperwork. He barely looked up when I entered. Dad, I need to talk to you about something important. Can it wait? I'm dealing with some foundation issues. I lost my job today. That got his attention. He finally met my eyes, but his expression was more annoyed than concerned. These things happen, sweetheart. Have you been keeping your skills current? Dad, I think Regina had something to do with it. He sighed, putting down his pen. Not this again. Your aunt is going through a difficult time. She doesn't have time to meddle in your career. A difficult time? I pulled out my phone. You mean like this? I played one of Regina's voicemails. Hector can't know about the missing money. Quincy promised he could cover it up, but we need more funds. Dad's face darkened. Where did you get that? She's been calling me for weeks, begging for money. Did you know she's working with Quincy O'Connor? That's enough. He stood up abruptly. Regina's business dealings are none of your concern, and recording private conversations? That's a new low, even for you. Even for me, I laughed. What about the charity fraud, the missing donations? Does any of that matter? You don't understand how these things work, he said, his voice dropping. Sometimes maintaining appearances is more important than what? The truth? Eva appeared in the doorway. Is everything all right? Bridget's baby shower planning committee is meeting here in 20 minutes. Dad straightened his tie. We're done here. Layla, I suggest you focus on finding a new job instead of creating drama. I walked out, my hands shaking. In my car, I pulled up the email I'd received that morning from Quincy O'Connor himself. Ms. Blair, your aunt's foundation is none of your business. However, if you're interested in discussing matters further, perhaps we could meet. Below that was another email, this one from an anonymous account. Look into Regina Young's real estate holdings, specifically the Walker Street property. Follow the money. I drove to Walker Street, a rundown area where Regina's charity claimed to be building affordable housing. The lot was empty, except for a weather-beaten sign announcing Future Home of Young Family Foundation Community Centre. My phone buzzed with a text from Bridget. Heard you got fired. Don't worry, I'm sure someone will hire you for entry-level work. BTW, you're still coming to my shower, right? Gifts minimum $200. I took a photo of the empty lot, then started researching property records. The community centre had received over $2 million in donations. The building permits were all fake. Another text arrived, this time from Regina. Stay away from Walker Street. Last warning. I smiled, saving the message. Then I called the number Quincy had provided. Mr. O'Connor's office. This is Layla Blair. Tell him I have proof of the Walker Street fraud, and I'm happy to share it with the IRS, unless he wants to talk. There was a pause. Hold, please. Quincy's voice came on the line, smooth as oil. Miss Blair, I wondered when you'd call. Shall we discuss this over coffee? No coffee, just answers. How long have you been helping my aunt launder money? He chuckled. Straight to the point. Like mother, like daughter? I froze. What do you know about my mother? More than you think. Tell me, did they ever explain exactly how she died? The line went dead. I sat in my car, staring at the empty lot where millions of donated dollars had vanished. My mother's death had always been attributed to an accidental overdose of anxiety medication. But now? My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Your mother was asking the same questions before she died. Be careful who you trust. The baby shower was in 3 days. I had work to do. The attic of my childhood home smelled like dust and secrets. I hadn't been up here since before Mum died, but Quincy's words kept echoing in my head. I needed answers. What are you doing up there? Eva's voice carried from below. Just looking for some old photos, I called back. For Bridget's shower. Don't make a mess, and be quick about it. I have a committee meeting in an hour. I waited until her heels clicked away before pulling out my phone's flashlight. Mum's old chest sat in the corner, covered in cobwebs. The lock was still intact. Dad had never bothered to open it after she died. Thank God for YouTube lock-picking tutorials. 10 minutes later, I lifted the lid. The smell of her perfume, faint but present, made my throat tight. Inside were stacks of papers, old journals, and a manila envelope marked Regina, Evidence. Oh my God, I whispered, pulling out the first journal. The entry was dated 3 months before her death. Regina's been pressuring Hector about the trust fund again. Says she needs access for her new foundation. I've tried warning him about Quincy, but he won't listen. Someone needs to stop them before it's too late. I flipped through more pages. Found discrepancies in Regina's charity accounts. Millions missing. When I confronted her, she laughed. Said no one would believe the unstable sister-in-law. Eva's involved somehow? Caught her shredding documents in Hector's study? They don't know I made copies. The last entry made my blood run cold. Regina threatened me today. Said accidents happen to people who ask too many questions. I've hidden the proof in the old beach house. If anything happens to me... The entry stopped mid-sentence. My phone buzzed. A text from Regina. Eva says you're snooping in the attic. Careful what you dig up. I quickly photographed every page, then reached for the manila envelope. Inside were bank statements, property records, and photos. One showed Regina meeting with Quincy outside a bank. Another captured Eva handling a briefcase in a parking garage. Layla? Dad's voice startled me. He stood at the attic entrance. What are you doing with your mother's things? I held up the photos. Maybe you can explain these? He climbed up, face pale as he looked at the images. Where did you get those? Mum took them, before her accidental overdose. Don't. His voice cracked. Don't go there. Why not? Because Regina's your precious sister? Because Eva's your perfect wife? Or because you knew what they were doing and looked the other way? You don't understand. Mum understood. That's why she died, isn't it? He grabbed the photos. Your mother was troubled. She imagined conspiracies everywhere. Really? I pulled out my phone, played Regina's voicemail about the missing money. Was she imagining this too? Dad sank onto an old trunk. Regina made some mistakes, bad investments, but she's family. Mum was family too. Layla, please. He looked older suddenly, defeated. Let it go, for everyone's sake. Like you let Mum go? He flinched. I grabbed the journal and envelope, backing away. The charity fraud, the threats, Mum's death, it's all connected, and I'm going to prove it. You'll destroy this family. No, Dad. They already did that. Downstairs, Eva was waiting. Find what you were looking for? I clutched Mum's journal to my chest. Actually, yes. My phone buzzed again. Quincy. Meet me tomorrow, noon. I'll tell you everything about your mother. Eva's eyes narrowed at the journal. That belongs to the family. You're right, I said, walking past her. It belongs to my real family. Outside, I sat in my car, hands shaking as I read more entries. Mum had documented everything. The fake charities, the laundered money, Regina's partnership with Quincy. She'd been building a case, preparing to expose them all. Then she'd, accidentally, taken too many pills. Another text arrived, anonymous. Your mother left something at the beach house. 3rd floorboard from the window. Get it before they do. I started the car. The beach house was an hour away, abandoned since Mum's death. Dad had never sold it, claiming too many memories. Or maybe he was afraid of what someone might find there. Regina's voice played from my latest recording. I'd keep your little suspicions to yourself. I smiled, thinking of the baby shower in 2 days. Don't worry, Aunt Regina. I won't keep them to myself. I'll share them with everyone. The beach house waited, holding one last secret. And this time, I wouldn't let them bury the truth along with it. Layla? I nearly dropped my coffee. That voice. I hadn't heard it in 2 years, not since our messy breakup. But there was Milo, standing in the bookstore cafe, looking exactly the same except for a new tech startup guy beard. Of all the coffee shops in all the world, I said, trying to sound casual while clutching Mom's journal under my arm. You look... He paused. Stressed. That obvious? I always could read you. He gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I? I hesitated, then nodded. Milo had been the one person who'd seen through my family's perfect facade. Maybe that's why they'd worked so hard to drive him away. Still doing tech security consulting? I asked. Yeah, actually, just finished a job tracking financial fraud for a big charity foundation. He smiled. Funny coincidence. It involved someone you might know. Quincy O'Connor. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What do you know about Quincy? Enough to know he's meeting you at noon. At my shocked look, he added, I may have been monitoring his communications. Professionally, of course. Of course. I leaned forward. Milo, what's his connection to my aunt? Better question. What was his connection to your mum? I pulled out the journal, showed him the entries. His eyes widened as he read. Holy shit, Layla. This is bigger than charity fraud. This is... Murder? I finished quietly. He ran a hand through his hair. You can't meet Quincy alone. He's dangerous. I need answers. Then let me help. He pulled out his laptop. I've been building a case against him for months. Look at this. He showed me financial records, property transfers, shell companies, all connecting Regina, Quincy, and Eva to millions in stolen charitable donations. The Walker Street property? I asked. Just the tip of the iceberg. They've been running this scam for years. Started right around the time your mum died. My phone buzzed. Regina. Changed my mind about that loan. Name your price. They're getting nervous, Milo said, reading over my shoulder. Good. I have to go to the beach house, I told him. Mom left something there. I'm coming with you. Milo? Look, I'm sorry I walked away before. I let them intimidate me. But I'm not leaving you alone in this. An hour later, we stood in my mother's dusty beach house. The third floorboard came up easily, revealing a USB drive and a sealed envelope. It's encrypted, Milo said, examining the drive. Give me an hour. While he worked, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. My dearest Layla, if you're reading this, they finally silenced me, but they couldn't erase the evidence. Everything's here. The fake charities, the stolen money, and the truth about Regina and Quincy's partnership. Eva helped them cover it up, convinced your father I was paranoid. Maybe I was, but I was also right. The drive contains proof. Bank records, recordings, photos, enough to destroy them all. I'm trusting you to finish what I started. Be careful, be brave, be smarter than I was. All my love, Mum. Got it, Milo called out. Layla, you need to see this. His laptop showed dozens of files, videos of Regina and Quincy planning their schemes, evidence of forged documents, and one final video, security footage from the night my mother died. I can't watch this, I whispered. Milo squeezed my hand. You don't have to, but now we have everything we need. My phone lit up. Quincy. Where are you? Meeting started 30 minutes ago. Then Regina. Whatever he's offering, I'll double it. Perfect, Milo said. They're turning on each other. The baby shower's tomorrow. He looked at me. You sure you want to do it there? In front of everyone? That's exactly where it needs to happen. They humiliated my mother, drove her to her death, then acted like nothing happened. Okay. He started copying files. I'll create a presentation they'll never forget. Why are you helping me? He paused. Because 2 years ago, I walked away when you needed me. I won't make that mistake again. My phone buzzed one more time. Ava, your father's very disappointed in your behaviour. Last chance to drop this nonsense. I looked at Milo, at Mum's letter, at the evidence spread across his laptop screen. Tell Dad not to worry, I texted back. Tomorrow, everyone will finally see the truth. Hope you all got Bridget something nice for the shower. I know I did. Ready? Milo asked. I nodded, picking up Mum's journal. Time to give my family the surprise party they deserve. Everything's loaded on your phone, Milo said, handing me back my device. One tap, and it'll all stream to the smart TV at Regina's house. We sat in his car outside a coffee shop, hours before the baby shower. I scrolled through the files, Mum's videos, Regina's voicemails, the security footage, bank records, all organised into a devastating presentation. You sure about this? He asked. Watch this, I said, dialing Regina's number on speaker. Layla, I was just thinking about you. Her voice dripped honey. About that loan you mentioned. Save it. I'm calling about Mum's beach house visit the night she died. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. No? The security cameras remember. So does Quincy. He contacted you? Sharp edge to her voice now. He showed me everything, Regina. The fake charities, the money laundering, the threats against Mum. Whatever he told you. I'm giving you one chance. Confess at the shower, return the money, or everyone sees the footage. She laughed, but it sounded forced. You're bluffing. Check your email. I heard her sharp intake of breath as she opened the clip I'd sent, just enough to prove I had it all. You little bitch, she whispered. See you at the shower, Aunt Regina. Don't forget my gift. I hung up. My phone immediately lit up with texts. Eva. Stop this nonsense immediately. Mila. You're pathetic. Dad. We need to talk. Bridget. Don't you dare ruin my shower. They're scared, Milo observed. Good. I checked my makeup in the mirror. They should be. I'll be parked outside if you need me. Actually, I hesitated. Would you come in with me? He smiled. Try to stop me. We arrived at Regina's house just as the party was starting. Eva's eyes narrowed when she saw Milo. This is a family event, she said. Perfect, I replied. Because we're about to have a real family discussion. Inside, Regina was holding court, directing caterers and fawning over Bridget. She froze when she saw me. Layla, and Milo, how unexpected. Wouldn't miss it, I said, setting my gift, a simple USB drive wrapped in baby paper, on the table. Milo connected his laptop to the TV while I circulated, recording every conversation on my phone. Regina kept watching me, her smile growing more strained by the minute. Present time, Bridget announced, clapping her hands. I watched them open gift after gift. Designer clothes, expensive toys, each one accompanied by Regina's running commentary about the giver's generosity. Layla's next, Mila said sweetly, though I'm not sure how much she could afford, being unemployed and all. The room tittered. I stood up. Actually, my gift is for everyone. I nodded to Milo. Especially you, Aunt Regina. This isn't the time, Dad started. It's exactly the time. I faced the room. Did you know my mum tried to expose a charity fraud scheme right before she died? Regina, why don't you tell everyone about the Walker Street property? Regina's face went white. Layla, don't. No? Then let's watch this instead. Milo hit play. The TV lit up with security footage. Regina and Quincy counting money in her office. Eva shredding documents. Mum confronting them all. Turn it off! Regina lunged for the TV. Can't, Milo said. It's streaming live to several news outlets. The room erupted. Bridget started crying. Eva grabbed her phone. Dad just sat there, head in his hands. That's not all, I announced, my voice carrying over the chaos. Mum left evidence about everything, including the night she died. You're lying, Regina snarled. I played her voicemail. 10,000, that's all I need. Think of it as an investment. Then another. If you tell anyone about this, you'll regret it. And finally, the security footage from the beach house, showing Regina and Eva entering the night Mom died. The police have copies, Milo added. They're very interested in the timing of your visit and her accidental overdose. Sirens wailed in the distance. Regina grabbed her purse, but Milo blocked the door. Going somewhere, Aunt Regina, but we haven't even had cake. The first police car pulled up outside. I watched my family's perfect facade crumble in real time. Layla, Dad pleaded. She's still your aunt. No. I picked up Mum's journal. She's the woman who killed my mother, and now everyone knows it. The doorbell rang. Regina started to cry. I smiled. The same calm smile I'd been practicing for months. Best baby shower ever, don't you think? The police officers entered Regina's perfect home, disrupting her perfect party, and my perfect revenge snapped into place like the last piece of a puzzle. Regina Young? The lead detective held up his badge. We have some questions about the Young Family Foundation and the death of Lillian Blair. Regina's mascara was running, but she still tried to maintain control. This is ridiculous. We're having a baby shower. Actually, I stepped forward. We're having a long overdue family meeting. Detective, I have something you should see. I handed him Mum's journal and the USB drive. There's evidence of charity fraud, money laundering, and... I looked directly at Regina. Premeditated murder. You can't prove anything, Eva cut in, but her voice shook. The security footage proves everything, Milo said, pulling up the beach house video. Watch this part carefully, Detective. The footage showed Regina and Eva entering Mum's beach house at 11:42 p.m. They left at 12:37 a.m. Mum was found dead the next morning. That proves nothing, Regina snapped. We were checking on her. Really? I played another recording. Regina's voice filled the room. She knows too much. We need to handle this tonight. The detective took notes while Regina's face crumpled. Bridget had collapsed onto the couch, her baby shower gifts scattered around her like evidence at a crime scene. Mrs. Young, we'll need you to come down to the station, the detective said. Wait! Regina's voice turned desperate. Layla, please, I'll tell you everything. I'll give you money, whatever you want. I walked up to her, close enough to smell her expensive perfume. I want my mother back. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, she whispered. She was just supposed to take enough to sleep, to forget what she'd found. We didn't mean to kill her, I finished. Just like you didn't mean to get me fired, to isolate me from my family, to steal millions from charity. Ava tried to reach for her phone, but Milo intercepted it. Looking for Quincy? He's already at the station. Turns out he doesn't handle pressure well. Hector? Eva pleaded with my father. Do something. Dad finally stood up. For a moment, I thought he might defend them again. Instead, he walked over and picked up Mum's journal. I should have believed her, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Layla. Regina made one last attempt. Everything I did for this family. The foundation helped people. The foundation stole from people, I corrected. Just like you stole my mother from me. The detective moved to handcuff Regina. She thrashed, suddenly hysterical. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I did for you, what you did for me. I laughed. Let's list it. You murdered my mother, gaslit my father, stole millions, got me fired, excluded me from every family event. And then, I gestured around the room. You mocked me at your daughter's baby shower. Speaking of which, Milo added, everything's still streaming live. Your charity donors are getting quite a show. Regina's scream of rage was cut short by the detective reading her rights. Eva was handcuffed next, still trying to maintain her dignity. You'll regret this, she hissed as they led her out. Not as much as you will, I replied. Mila tried to slip away, but I caught her arm. Don't forget your part in this. The recordings of you helping them cover it up. The IRS will be very interested. The baby shower guests fled like rats from a sinking ship. Bridget sat alone, mascara streaked, surrounded by expensive gifts bought with stolen money. Did you know? I asked her. She shook her head. Not everything, just pieces. I didn't want to know more. Well, now everyone knows. Dad touched my shoulder. Layla, I don't know how to make this right. You can't. I shrugged off his hand. But you can start by telling the police everything you remember about Mum's last days. He nodded, following the detective out. Milo and I stood in the wreckage of the party. Pastel decorations hung limply, the welcome baby banner now seeming darkly ironic. Want to get out of here? He asked. 1 second. I walked over to the gift table and picked up the mobile I'd made. For the baby, I told Bridget. It's not bought with stolen money, so it might be the only gift you get to keep. She took it, hands trembling. I'm sorry about everything. Me too. I turned to leave, then looked back. Oh, and Bridget? Don't name the baby after Regina. Prison visits are hell on a newborn's schedule. Outside, police lights painted the perfect suburban street in red and blue. Neighbours watched from behind curtains as Regina and Eva were driven away. Ready? Milo asked. I took one last look at the house where my family's secrets had finally unravelled. Yeah, let's go get cake somewhere else. The morning newspaper headline read, Socialite sisters charged in multi-million-dollar charity fraud connected to cold case death. Regina's mugshot didn't look quite as polished as her usual society page photos. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the baby shower. Texts from distant relatives claiming they always knew something was wrong. Messages from Regina's charity donors demanding answers. Reporters wanting interviews. I ignored them all and drove to the cemetery instead. Hey, Mum, I said, placing fresh flowers on her grave. We did it. They can't hurt anyone else now. Thought I'd find you here. Milo's voice came from behind me. He held up 2 coffee cups. Brought reinforcements. Thanks. I took a sip. The detective called. Quincy's talking. A lot. I heard. The DA's offering him a deal in exchange for testimony about the night your mum died. A text lit up my phone. Bridget. They're seizing all the foundation's assets. Dad left. Everything's falling apart. Good, I said. But the victory felt hollow somehow. Having second thoughts? Milo asked. No, just... I touched Mum's headstone. Wish she could see this. She can. Through you. Another text buzzed. Dad this time. I'm at the beach house. Please come. Need to show you something. Want backup? Milo offered. I shook my head. This one I need to do alone. The beach house looked different in daylight. Less haunted. Dad waited on the porch, holding a cardboard box. Found these while cleaning out my office, he said as I approached. Your mother's photos. The real ones, not the ones Regina made us display. Inside the box were hundreds of pictures. Mom and me at the beach. Family picnics before Eva. My first art show, Mom beaming with pride. I was a coward, Dad said quietly. I let them convince me she was unstable. Let them erase her bit by bit. Then I let them do the same to you. Why? Because believing the lie was easier than facing the truth. He pulled out one last photo. Mom and Regina as young girls, smiling, arms linked. I never understood what changed Regina, why she became so... evil? Broken. He sighed. The detective found evidence that she'd been embezzling long before your mother discovered it. The foundation was just her biggest scheme. My phone buzzed again. The detective. Quincy confirmed everything. Eva and Regina will be charged with first-degree murder. They're going to prison, I told Dad. For a long time. He nodded. Good. Then, I've stepped down from the company board. Selling the house too. Think I need a fresh start. What about Ava's daughter? Mila's fled to Europe. Probably wise, given the federal investigation. We stood in silence, watching waves crash against the shore. Finally, Dad spoke again. I know I can't fix this. Can't make up for failing you and your mother. But I'd like to try, if you'll let me. I thought about Mum's journal entry. Hector's not evil, just weak. Sometimes that's worse. We can start with lunch, I said. Small steps. He smiled, relieved. Small steps. My phone lit up with a news alert. Young Family Foundation Donors File Class Action Lawsuit. Below it was a text from Bridget. Had the baby. Named her Lillian. Hope that's okay. I showed Dad the text. His eyes got wet. Life's weird, I said. 1 minute you're plotting revenge at a baby shower, the next you're a sort of aunt. Your mother would have loved that. He picked up the box of photos. Want to get coffee? Look through these properly? Actually, I glanced at my phone. Milo's waiting, but maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow, he agreed. Small steps. Driving back to the city, I passed Regina's now empty house. The welcome baby banner still hung limply, a pastel ghost of last week's implosion. Milo waited at our usual coffee shop, laptop open. How'd it go? Better than expected. I sat down. What are you working on? Job listings. Several tech firms are interested in your design skills. especially after that presentation you put together." I laughed. "Revenge, the ultimate portfolio piece. Speaking of," he turned the laptop toward me, "remember that mobile app you designed? The one Regina said would never work? 3 companies want to develop it?" My phone buzzed one last time. An email from Mum's old account scheduled decades ago. "My dearest Layla, if you're reading this, you finally uncovered the truth. Remember, justice isn't about destruction, it's about reconstruction. Build something beautiful from these ashes. All my love, Mom." I looked at Milo, at the job listings, at the future stretching out ahead. "Ready to build something new?" he asked. I closed Mom's email and opened a blank document. "Actually," I said, "I think I already have."
The freezing wind howled relentlessly, whipping against the car windows as Celine's voice cut through the frigid air, laced with disdain. "You two have been nothing but a burden since you moved in. Sort out your own mess this time." With a dismissive wave, she rolled up the window, leaving me and my feverish granddaughter Alara stranded on the icy curb. I clutched Alara closer, her small frame shivering violently against mine. The hospital loomed in the distance, a mirage of safety amidst the swirling snow. I had no choice but to forge ahead, one painful step at a time. This wasn't how I envisioned my life after Robert's passing. Moving in with my son Denton and his family was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to heal and create precious memories with Alara. But Celine had other plans. From the moment I stepped through their door, her barely concealed contempt seeped into every interaction. Denton, ever the peacekeeper, remained oblivious to the toxic undercurrents brewing beneath his own roof. Alara's once vibrant spirit gradually dimmed, her laughter becoming a rare commodity. I watched helplessly as Celine's sharp tongue chipped away at her confidence, dismissing her as a nuisance whenever Denton wasn't around. "Grandma, I'm so cold," Alara whimpered, her words muffled against my coat. I tightened my grip, determination hardening my resolve. We would make it through this ordeal, and then I would find a way to free us from Celine's suffocating grip. I could no longer stand idly by while my granddaughter's light was extinguished before my eyes. The time had come to gather my strength and confront the shadows that threatened to consume us both. After the harrowing ordeal of reaching the hospital, Alara and I were admitted for treatment. As the doctor tended to us, I couldn't shake the nagging worry that had taken root. Alara's dull eyes and listless demeanor hinted at a deeper malaise than mere illness. Once we were settled in our room, I gently broached the subject. "Sweetheart, is everything okay at home? You know you can tell Grandma anything." Alara hesitated, her small fingers fiddling with the hospital blanket. "Mom gets really mad sometimes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "When Dad's not home, she yells a lot and calls me names." My heart clenched at her words, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Celine's contempt extended far beyond me. Her own daughter was a target of her cruelty. "Does she ever hurt you?" I asked, dreading the answer. Alara shook her head quickly. "No, she just gets really angry and says mean things." Relief washed over me, but the revelation left a bitter taste. How could a mother treat her child with such disdain? As the days passed, Alara's trust in me grew, and she began sharing more disturbing details. Celine's neglect knew no bounds, forgetting meals, leaving Alara alone for hours, and lashing out over the most trivial mishaps. With each new disclosure, my resolve hardened. I couldn't allow this toxic environment to continue poisoning my precious granddaughter's spirit. But confronting Celine directly would only invite manipulation and denials. I needed concrete evidence to expose her true nature to Denton. From that moment on, I became a silent observer, carefully documenting every incident, every cruel remark, and every act of negligence. My notebook became a damning record of Celine's transgressions, a weapon to wield against her facade of perfection. As we recovered in the hospital, I found solace in plotting our escape from Celine's tyranny. No longer would we cower in the shadows, fearing her wrath. It was time to bring her reign of terror to an end, no matter the cost. Back home after our hospital stay, I vowed to keep a closer eye on Celine's behavior. It didn't take long for her true colors to rear their ugly head once more. One afternoon, Alara accidentally spilled her juice while coloring at the kitchen table. A harmless mistake, one any child could make. But to Celine, It was an unforgivable offense. "You clumsy brat," she snarled, snatching the empty cup from Ilara's trembling hands. "Look at the mess you've made. Can't you do anything right?" Ilara shrank back, her eyes welling with tears. "I'm sorry, Mommy. It was an accident." Celine's lips curled in a sneer. "Sorry doesn't clean up your messes, does it? Useless, just like your good-for-nothing grandma." My blood boiled at her scathing words, but I forced myself to remain calm. Confronting her directly would only provoke more venom. As Celine stormed off, muttering insults under her breath, I pulled Ilara into a tight embrace. "Don't listen to her, sweetie. You did nothing wrong." Ilara clung to me, her small frame shaking with quiet sobs. It tore me apart to see her light dimming further with each verbal assault. From that day on, I became Celine's silent shadow, discreetly documenting her every outburst and cruelty. My notebook filled with damning accounts of her neglect and emotional abuse, building an airtight case against her. Meanwhile, I shielded Ilara as best I could, offering comfort and reassurance whenever Celine's wrath struck. Our bond grew stronger with each shared confidence, a fortress against the storm raging around us. Celine, oblivious to my clandestine efforts, continued her reign of terror unchecked. But with each passing day, my determination solidified. I would not allow this venomous woman to break my granddaughter's spirit any longer. The perfect opportunity arose when Denton announced a business trip, leaving us alone with Celine for a week. I steeled myself, ready to unleash the full force of my ammunition. As Denton's car disappeared down the driveway, Celine turned to us with a sinister smile. "Looks like it's just us girls for a while. You two had better be on your best behavior." I met her gaze unflinchingly, my notebook tucked securely under my arm. The time for reckoning had arrived. With Denton away, Celine descended into a frenzy of cruelty, unleashing her wrath on Ilara and me without restraint. Gone were the pretenses of civility. Her true, vile nature was on full display. "Look at this pigsty," she snarled, sweeping her arm across the living room. A few toys lay scattered, evidence of Ilara's innocent playtime. "Clean up this mess immediately, you worthless brats!" Ilara scrambled to gather her belongings, her small hands trembling. I clenched my fists, biting back the torrent of anger threatening to spill forth. As the week dragged on, each day brought fresh torment. Celine delighted in berating Ilara over the slightest infractions, her insults growing increasingly vicious. "You're nothing but a burden, a mistake I wish I'd never made," she hissed, towering over Ilara's cowering form. I couldn't bear to witness the light in my granddaughter's eyes dimming further. Enough was enough. I would no longer stand idly by. That night, as Celine retired to her room, I gathered Ilara close. "Sweetheart, I need you to be brave for me," I whispered. "Tell me everything that's been happening when your dad is away. Don't leave out a single detail." With tears streaming down her cheeks, Ilara poured out the heartbreaking truth. The neglect, the name-calling, the constant belittling. Each word was a dagger to my heart, but I diligently recorded every painful revelation in my notebook. By the end of her testimony, my hands were trembling with rage. How could a mother inflict such cruelty upon her own child? As the week drew to a close, I found myself at a crossroads. Part of me yearned to confront Celine head-on, to unleash the full force of my righteous fury. But a small, cautious voice warned against such rash action. Without Denton's support, any confrontation would be futile, leaving Ilara and me vulnerable to further retaliation. No, I needed to bide my time, to wait for the perfect moment to shatter Celine's facade and expose her true, monstrous nature. Only then could we find the freedom and peace we so desperately craved. With a heavy heart, I tucked my damning evidence away, forcing a mask of calm over my seething rage. Celine would pay for her sins, but not until I had Denton as an ally in our fight. For now I would endure, shielding Ilara as best I could until the time for reckoning arrived. The day of the storm dawned ominously, the leaden skies foreshadowing the tempest to come. As the winds howled and the snow swirled relentlessly, Ilara and I fell ill, our bodies racked with fever and chills. In our weakened state, we were mere burdens in Celine's eyes. "You two are more trouble than you're worth," she spat, glaring at us with undisguised contempt. "I'm not wasting my time dragging your sorry selves to the hospital." I mustered what little strength I had, pleading with her. "Ilara is just a child, Celine. She needs medical care." her lips twisted into a cruel sneer. "Then I suggest you figure it out, old woman. I've got better things to do than cater to your pathetic whims." With those venomous words, she turned and stalked away, leaving us to fend for ourselves against the raging storm. Desperation clawed at me as I gathered Iulia into my arms, her small form burning with fever. We had no choice but to brave the treacherous conditions, no matter the cost. Each step was an agonizing battle, the wind and snow conspiring to impede our progress. Iulia whimpered softly, her grip on me growing weaker with every grueling minute that passed. By the time we finally stumbled through the hospital doors, we were both on the verge of collapse. Nurses rushed to our aid, whisking us away for urgent treatment. As I lay in the sterile hospital bed, my thoughts churned with a potent mixture of fear and fury. Celine's callous actions had nearly cost us our lives, all because of her twisted need to assert dominance and control. In that moment, any lingering doubts evaporated. I could no longer sit idly by, allowing her toxicity to poison our lives. It was time to take a stand, to break free from her tyrannical grip once and for all. With grim determination, I retrieved my notebook from my bag, flipping through the damning pages. Every cruel word, every act of neglect, meticulously documented and ready to be unleashed. Celine's reign of terror would end, even if I had to burn her twisted world to the ground. I would not rest until Iulia and I were free from her insidious clutches, free to breathe the sweet air of liberation. As I clutched the notebook to my chest, a newfound resolve coursed through my veins. The battle lines were drawn, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The hospital became our sanctuary, a reprieve from Celine's poisonous grip. As Iulia and I slowly regained our strength, I knew this temporary peace wouldn't last. It was time to strike back and reclaim our lives. Seizing a rare moment alone, I dialed Denton's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the third ring, his voice laced with concern. "Mom, is everything okay?" I took a steadying breath, steeling my resolve. "No, Denton, everything is not okay. We need to talk, in person, as soon as you return." A pause, then. "What's going on? Has Celine done something?" The dam of pent-up frustration burst open. "That woman you call a wife is a monster, Denton. She's been emotionally abusing Iulia and me for months, and this latest incident nearly cost us our lives." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Mom, those are heavy accusations. Celine can be difficult at times, but surely you're exaggerating." "I'm not exaggerating anything," I snapped. "I have documented proof of her cruelty, her neglect, her vicious behavior. Open your eyes, son, before it's too late." An uneasy silence stretched between us, punctuated by Denton's ragged breaths. Finally he spoke, his voice strained. "All right, Mom, I'll be home in 2 days. We'll discuss this then." As I ended the call, a weight lifted from my shoulders. The wheels were in motion. Soon, Celine's twisted web of lies would unravel, and the truth would be laid bare. Over the next 2 days, I pored over my notebook, reviewing each damning entry with a critical eye. Every detail had to be razor-sharp, leaving no room for doubt or manipulation. I also took the time to bolster Iulia's courage, reminding her of the importance of speaking up and telling her father the unvarnished truth. No more fear, no more hiding. It was time to confront the shadows head-on. When Denton finally arrived at the hospital, his face was drawn and haggard. I wasted no time with pleasantries, thrusting my notebook into his hands. "Read it," I commanded. "Every page, every word. Then we'll talk." As he pored over the meticulously detailed accounts, his expression morphed from skepticism to horror. Iulia's soft voice filled the tense silence, recounting the torment she had endured at her mother's hands. By the time she finished, Denton's eyes were filled with unshed tears. He raised a trembling hand, silencing my impending tirade. "Enough," he rasped. "I've heard enough. How could I have been so blind?" In that moment, I knew we had won. Celine's twisted facade had finally shattered, leaving her naked and exposed before the harsh light of truth. As Denton pulled us into a fierce embrace, I allowed myself a small, grim smile. The battle had been arduous, but we had emerged victorious. Celine's reign of terror was over, and a new dawn beckoned on the horizon. The air was thick with tension as Denton confronted Celine, my damning notebook clutched in his white-knuckled grip. Iulia and I watched from the sidelines, a united front against the storm about to be unleashed. "How could you, Celine?" Denton's voice was laced with barely contained fury. My own daughter, my own mother. How could you treat them with such cruelty? Celine's eyes widened in mock innocence, her lips curving in sickly sweet smile. Darling, whatever are you talking about? Those two are nothing but a pair of hysterical liars trying to turn you against me. I felt Iulia tense beside me, no doubt bracing for another onslaught of venom from her mother's forked tongue. But Denton was having none of it. Save it, he spat, thrusting the notebook towards her. I've seen the proof with my own eyes. The names you called her, the neglect, the emotional abuse, it's all documented here in excruciating detail. Celine's saccharine mask slipped, her features twisting into an ugly sneer. So the old hag has been keeping a little diary, has she? How quaint. This is no joke, Celine. Denton's voice was low, dangerous. I want the truth and I want it now. Why? Why would you treat your own family with such contempt? For a moment, Celine's eyes darted towards us, a flicker of unease crossing her face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. Because they're nothing but a pair of worthless burdens dragging me down, she hissed. That sniveling brat of yours is a constant annoyance, and your mother is a meddlesome relic who should have been left to rot in a nursing home. The venom in her words took my breath away, but Iulia surprised us all by stepping forward, her small frame trembling with a newfound courage. You're wrong, Mommy, she said, her voice ringing with clarity. Grandma is the only one who ever really loved me. You're just a mean, horrible person. Celine recoiled as if struck, her eyes blazing with fury. For a moment, I feared she might lash out physically, but Denton was there in an instant, placing himself between her and Iulia like a shield. That's enough, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I've seen all I need to see. We're done, Celine. Pack your things and get out of my house. As Celine sputtered and raged, hurling every vile insult in her arsenal, Denton simply turned his back on her, gathering Iulia into his arms. I followed suit, wrapping my arms around them both in a protective embrace. The battle was won, the monster slain. As Celine's shrill threats faded into the distance, a profound sense of peace washed over me. The shadows had been banished, and a new chapter was about to begin. In the aftermath of Celine's explosive departure, a palpable sense of relief settled over our household. The shadows that had once loomed so oppressively were banished, replaced by the warm glow of newfound freedom. As Denton finalized the divorce proceedings, Iulia and I began the process of healing, shedding the emotional scars inflicted by Celine's reign of terror. With each passing day, I watched my granddaughter's spirit regain its vibrancy, her laughter echoing through the halls once more. Gone were the timid glances and hushed tones, replaced by the unbridled joy of a child finally allowed to be herself. Denton, too, seemed renewed, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I was so blind, he confided in me one evening as we sat on the porch, basking in the warm summer breeze, so caught up in trying to maintain the perfect family that I ignored the cracks in the foundation. I reached over, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. What matters now is that we've found our way back to each other. Iulia is thriving, and we can finally move forward as a family, free from Celine's poisonous influence. Denton nodded, his eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and resolve. None of this would have been possible without your strength, Mom. You were the one who refused to let that woman break us. A lump formed in my throat as I thought back to the darkest days, when Celine's cruelty seemed inescapable. But in the end, love and perseverance had prevailed, forging us into an unbreakable unit. Over the following months, we settled into a new normal, a life defined not by fear or manipulation, but by genuine love and support. Denton poured his energy into his work and being the best father he could be, while Iulia and I rekindled our bond, sharing secrets and laughter like co-conspirators. As I watched them play in the backyard one sun-dappled afternoon, my heart swelled with contentment. This was the life I had always envisioned, a warm, nurturing haven where my family could thrive. In that moment, I silently thanked the universe for granting me the courage to stand firm against the shadows that had once threatened to consume us. It had been a harrowing journey, but we had emerged victorious, our love and resilience shining like a beacon in the darkness. As Iulia's joyful giggles floated on the gentle breeze, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, fortified by the unbreakable bonds of family. The shadows were gone, banished forever, and a new dawn had finally arrived. I took a deep breath, forcing a smile as Elise walked into the backyard for our family barbecue. Edwin squeezed my hand, sensing my unease. "It'll be fine," he whispered, though his eyes betrayed doubt. Elise plopped down on a lawn chair, not even glancing our way. The tension was palpable, like a thick fog smothering any warmth between us. I had tried so hard to connect with her, but she remained distant, her resentment towards me as impenetrable as a fortress wall. "Elise, why don't you help your father with the grill?" I suggested, hoping some father-daughter bonding might thaw the ice. She rolled her eyes, but begrudgingly stood up, grabbing a baseball bat lying nearby. As she swung it casually, I felt a pang of unease. Edwin chuckled nervously. "Be careful with that, honey." In a split second, the bat slipped from her hands, hurtling straight towards me. I froze, my heart pounding, as it whistled past, missing me by inches. Edwin rushed over, his face pale. "Elise, what were you thinking?" "It was an accident," she shrugged, not even apologizing. But as I met her cold, defiant stare, I knew better. This was no accident. It was a warning shot, a clear message that she wanted nothing to do with my efforts at family unity. The line had been drawn, and the battle lines were forming for a war I never wanted to fight. A few weeks after the barbecue incident, Edwin came home looking grim. "I lost the Henderson account," he said, sinking into a chair. My heart sank. The Henderson tech firm was one of his biggest clients. "How bad is it?" I asked cautiously. Edwin sighed heavily. "Pretty bad. Without their retainer, we're going to be seriously strapped for cash." He ran a hand through his graying hair. "I don't know how we'll afford Elise's college next year." Speaking of the devil, Elise walked in right then. "What about my college?" she demanded. "Finances are tight," Edwin explained warily. "We may have to look at cheaper options." Elise's eyes narrowed to slits. "You're not sending me to a crappy state school after all my hard work." "Don't take that tone with your father," I chided, unable to stay silent. "Big mistake." She whirled on me, venom dripping from her words. "You're not my mother, so stay out of this." I recoiled, stung. Edwin shot me an apologetic look, but didn't reprimand her outburst. As usual, the fragile truce held by walking on eggshells around Elise. Later that night, I approached Edwin tentatively. "Look, I know money's tight, but let me help cover Elise's tuition." He shook his head adamantly. "You've been generous enough. I can't let you pay for my daughter's education." "Edwin, we're partners," I insisted. "Your struggles are mine. Please, let me do this, for our family." He searched my eyes for a long moment before giving a reluctant nod. "Okay, thank you, Marta." I smiled, hoping this olive branch might finally earn me some goodwill from Elise. Fat chance. The next day, she leveled me with a contemptuous glare when I told her the news about paying her tuition. "I don't want your charity," she spat. I fought to keep my temper. "It's not charity, Elise. We're family now, whether you like it or not." A cruel smirk twisted her lips. "You think throwing money around makes you part of this family? You'll never be anything more than Dad's little sugar baby." White-hot rage lanced through me at her vile insinuation. Taking a deep breath, I spoke slowly through gritted teeth. "You'd better watch yourself, young lady." Elise simply laughed derisively and stormed off, leaving me shaking with barely contained fury. Her escalating vitriol showed she had absolutely no intention of letting me into her life. If anything, she seemed bent on tearing our family apart seam by seam. Well, two could play at that game. I was done being the punching bag. If she insisted on making an enemy of me, I would meet her attacks with equal force. That spoiled little brat had no idea what she was in for. A few weeks later, Edwin and I hosted a small dinner party to celebrate his firm landing a promising new client. I was determined to bury the hatchet with Elise, at least for one night. As we sipped wine before the meal, Elise fixed me with her trademark sneer. "So, Marta, Dad tells me you used to run your own business before hitting it big in real estate." I tensed, thrown by the seeming non sequitur. "Well, yes, I had a small marketing company years ago." "That must have been quite the experience." Her eyes glinted with undisguised malice. "Considering it went bankrupt amidst rumors of shady practices." The room fell deathly silent, as the other guests froze. My cheeks burned with humiliation and shame over her dredging up that painful history. Edwin quickly tried to change the subject, but Elise plowed onwards mercilessly. They said you consistently misled clients, overpromising results you couldn't deliver. Shady stuff. Tears of anguish pricked my eyes as old wounds ripped open. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. "Leave it alone, Elise," Edwin said in a carefully measured tone, shooting her a warning look. But she ignored him, keeping her cruel gaze locked on my stricken face. "I'm just curious, what drove you to be such a unethical businesswoman back then? Did the ends always justify the means for you?" That did it. The floodgates burst open as years of pent-up hurt came pouring out. "You smug, sanctimonious little brat," I exploded, shocking everyone with my outburst. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Elise recoiled, her sneer faltering for the first time. But I was on a roll, unleashing a torrent of raw emotion. Maybe my business failed, but at least I took risks and worked for everything I have. What have you ever done besides being a spiteful, ungrateful leech on your father? Her face contorted with fury as she opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "Save your vicious lies. I'm done walking on eggshells around your childish tantrums." I whirled towards the gaping guests. "I'm so sorry, but I've lost my appetite." Grabbing my purse, I stormed out, leaving chaos in my wake. As I broke down in heaving sobs in the privacy of my car, one gut-wrenching truth became excruciatingly clear. Any hope of Elise and I achieving a real family bond was dead. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. If she wanted a war, she had just gotten one. I would match her blow for blow until she learned her place. The gloves were officially off. After the disastrous dinner party, the atmosphere at home was more toxic than ever. Edwin kept trying to play peacemaker, but Elise and I were done pulling punches. "You're going to have to choose sides eventually, Dad," she sneered one night over a frosty, silent meal. "Whose life is more important, mine or your little wife's?" Edwin looked pained, but remained infuriatingly neutral. "Don't make me pick between my family, Elise. Can't we all just get along?" Elise laughed derisively. "Yeah, like that's possible with her around poisoning everything." I bit back the urge to slap that sneer off her smug face. Instead, I decided to take the gloves off in a different way, by hitting her where it would hurt most. Over the next few weeks, I discreetly started digging into Elise's life outside our home. What I uncovered sickened yet unsurprised me. Falsified transcripts, incidents of cheating and plagiarism, fake letters attesting to charitable work she'd never done. This perfect daughter was a fraud, plain and simple. No wonder she hated my presence. I represented a threat to her precious facade of virtue. Armed with my damning new intel, I calmly confronted her one afternoon. "Your grades and extracurriculars seem embellished." She stiffened, those cold eyes burning into me. "You're delusional. Everything's legitimate." "I have proof that says otherwise." I ticked off each infraction evenly. Cheating, plagiarism, forgery. Should I go on? For a split second, I saw a flicker of fear cross her face before the scornful mask slipped back on. "You're bluffing. You don't have anything." "Don't I?" I pulled out a thick file detailing every lie, every deception. "Want to tell your father the truth about his perfect princess?" Elise's knuckles whitened as she clenched her fists, eyes blazing pure hatred. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "Am I?" I shrugged nonchalantly. "Your move?" The next day, she made her next move all right, but it backfired spectacularly. While I was in the backyard, a heavy flower pot came crashing down from the second story just feet away from me. Edwin came running, panic etched across his face. "What happened?" "Ask your darling Elise," I spat, shaken from the near miss but keeping my cool. "She just tried to crush my skull." Elise stormed outside, face flushed with rage. "You're lying. It was an accident." I crossed my arms, unmoved. "Save your lies. We both know you wanted me seriously hurt." Father and daughter faced off in stony silence before Elise finally caved under our scrutiny. "So what if I did?" she snarled, voice dripping venom. "You're a psycho who deserves worse." My heart broke seeing the look of devastated betrayal on Edwin's face. This was his baby girl talking. What had caused her to evolve into such a twisted, vindictive shell? For the first time since entering this nightmare, a tiny flicker of pity sparked within me for Elise. Whatever hurts lay beneath, whatever demons drove her, they ran deeper than I could fathom. But that small pity was quickly extinguished as I realized with chilling certainty that there was no reaching her, no voice of reason that could penetrate her toxic darkness. Our war had finally entered the realm of life and death. And in that merciless realm, I vowed to be the last one standing, no matter how destructive the fallout. I was done being a victim to Elise's depravity. In the days following Elise's flower pot attack, the war between us escalated to dizzying heights. I started compiling an airtight dossier of every despicable act, every lie she'd ever committed, forged letters of recommendation, plagiarized essays, caught cheating on exams. Not one instance of academic misconduct was left out, as I methodically built an undeniable case against her. Elise remained frighteningly brazen, shooting me contemptuous looks, but staying uncharacteristically silent. For now. Edwin, meanwhile, was a hollow shell of himself, the life gradually beaten out by the trauma of seeing his once angelic daughter's true nature unveiled. I ached for him, but my pity was overshadowed by pragmatic resolve. I had to protect what was mine, my husband, my home, my life, that she was so hell-bent on destroying. If that meant ruthlessly dismantling her veneer of lies, so be it. One evening, Elise finally emerged from her sullen silence over a tense dinner. "I saw the real estate analyst you hired poking around," she said with a cruel smirk. "Digging up more dirt on me?" I gave a serene smile. "Just covering all my bases." "You're wasting your time." She stabbed a fork into her plate. "Dad would never believe your lies over his own flesh and blood." "We'll see about that," I replied coolly. "The truth has a way of coming out." Her nostrils flared, but I remained unruffled, taking a pointed sip of wine. Let her fume all she wanted, it would be the last of her blustering bravado, because later that night the final stroke was put into motion. While Elise was out with friends, I neatly compiled all the damning evidence and sensitive personal documents into an envelope for Edwin. No more soft peddling, no more appeasing the demon child. It was time he saw with crystalline clarity the despicable lies his daughter had perpetuated. When she finally stomped home well past curfew, I was waiting in the living room, envelope in hand. "You're out pretty late," I remarked mildly. "Fun night?" Elise sneered. "Don't pretend you care about my life." On the contrary. I held up the plump envelope, watching her face pale. "I care very much about the truth coming to light." She opened her mouth, but no words came out as stark realization dawned. "Your father's waiting to finally see the real you," I said softly, letting the implication hang in the air. For once, she seemed at a complete loss. No retort, no bravado to deflect the killing blow I'd been sharpening over these torturous months. "The game's end tonight, Elise," I stated with finality. "Your move." And with that, I brushed past her up the stairs to face the inevitable reckoning with Edwin head-on, ready to watch her world of lies crumble into dust. No more holding back, no more mercy. Tonight, I would have my victory, one way or another. I steeled myself as I entered Edwin's study, the damning envelope clutched tightly. He looked up, his face etched with weary resignation. "What's this about, Marta?" Taking a deep breath, I laid it all out for him. The forgeries, the plagiarism, the utter disregard for ethics and basic human decency. As the evidence mounted, his expression morphed from skepticism to stunned disbelief. This can't be," he stammered, hands trembling as he pored over the documents. "I'm sorry, Edwin," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But it's all true. Elise has been lying to us from the start." The heavy thud of footsteps preceded Elise's furious arrival. "Don't listen to her, Dad," she cried, panic cracking her usually cool veneer. "It's all lies." Edwin slowly turned to face his daughter, anguish and hope warring across his features. "Please, baby, tell me this isn't real." For a suspended moment, I actually thought I saw a flicker of doubt, of regret in Elise's eyes, a chance for her to come clean and atone. But like every other opportunity, it was vaporized by the narcissistic fury that ruled her soul. "Oh, it's real, all right." She spat with blistering contempt. Every last word of her twisted little stories. "You want to know why, Dad? Because that psycho bitch has been out to destroy me from day one." White-hot rage contorted her delicate features into an unrecognizable mask of hatred as she turned her venom on me. "I saw you for what you are the moment we met, a pathetic, insecure fraud trying to buy her way into our family." Edwin made a strangled noise, as if struck by the cruel verbal blows. But Elise was far from done, the floodgates of long-simmering resentments finally bursting open. "You think paying for my tuition earned you a place here? You were nothing but Dad's glorified sugar baby until I came along and exposed you for the lying snake you are. I opened my mouth, but she barreled onward in a fever pitch. All you've done is poison everything with your evil mind games. Well, congratulations, Daddy's latest whore. You finally turned him against his own flesh and blood. Edwin looked like he'd been shot, crumpling into his chair in a daze of devastated heartbreak. Finally, blessedly, Elise seemed to run out of vicious steam, her chest heaving. An oppressive silence swallowed the room as the shockwaves of her hate-laced tirade faded. Then Edwin raised his head and fixed his only child with a look of cold, hard resolution. "Get out!" he said in a toneless rasp. "I don't want to look at you right now." Elise actually flinched like she'd been slapped. "What?" "You heard me," he stated with quiet steel, more emotion in those 2 words than 1,000 screams. "Get out!" Whatever fleeting sympathy I'd felt for Elise in that moment vanished as the sheer extent of her maliciousness, her irredeemable depravity, crystallized before my eyes. This was no wounded, conflicted teenager acting out. This was a diabolical force of hate and selfishness that could never be reasoned with, never be redeemed, only cut out like the cancer it was before it metastasized. As Elise stormed out in a haze of fury and denial, it was like a crushing weight lifted from my shoulders. At long last, the storm had broken. Now, only the reckoning remained. The aftermath of Elise's volcanic outburst was like the eerie calm after a devastating storm. Edwin and I sat in numb silence, the weight of her hatred still suffocating the room. Finally, he spoke in a hoarse whisper. "All those years, how could I have been so blind?" I wanted to offer some reassurance, but what could I possibly say? The truth was a bitter pill. His beloved daughter was a master deceiver who had played him like a violin. Elise eventually slunk back, eyes still blazing defiance. "You're really going to take her lies over your own child?" she spat. Edwin slowly rose, a broken man, but one who had glimpsed the unvarnished truth at last. "Those weren't lies, Elise. They were facts you can no longer deny." She opened her mouth, grasping for another retort, but he raised a weary hand. "Enough. I can't even look at you right now." "What are you saying?" Her voice quavered for the first time. "I'm saying that until you take responsibility for your actions, I want you out of this house." The words seemed to drain him of his last reserves. Elise actually rocked back on her heels, stunned. "You're kicking me out?" "You're an adult now," Edwin stated flatly. "If you want to embrace being a liar and cheat, you can do it elsewhere." A snarl twisted her lips as the transgressor's mask slipped back on. "Fine, I never wanted to be part of this screwed-up family anyway." As she turned to storm off, no doubt plotting her revenge, I finally couldn't resist one last parting shot. "That's right, Elise. Run along like you always do when confronted with the consequences of your cruelty. Clearly Mom's training paid off spectacularly." She froze, then whirled with a look of such smoldering hatred it actually sent a chill down my spine. "Don't you dare bring my mother into this," she hissed in a low, dangerous tone. I simply gave her a level look. "Why? Ashamed of the miserable witch who warped you into her own poisonous image?" Her hands clenched into trembling fists as she drew a shuddering breath, visibly fighting for control. "At least she was flesh and blood," Elise finally spat. "Not some desperate, soulless lesion like you'll always be." With that Zaprusky strike, she whirled and stormed out, leaving me reeling from the verbal blast radius. As the full sting of her parting insult lanced through me, I had to fight back the gut punch of shame and hurt it triggered. For all my tough posturing, her cruel talent for cutting me where it hurt most remained as sharp as ever. But this time, it would be the last time. Because in finally unleashing the harsh consequences her behavior deserved, a line had been irrevocably crossed. There would be no makeup, no forgiveness tour. My war with Elise was over. I had cut her toxicity out of my life forever, even if her final strikes still found their mark. The weeks after kicking Elise out were some of the darkest of my life. Our once happy home felt haunted by the specter of betrayal and toxic vitriol we'd endured. Edwin was a shell of himself, plagued by waves of guilt for being so blind to his own daughter's malignant nature for so long. I did my best to comfort him, but his anguish constantly reopened the wounds Elise had carved into our family. "How could I have failed her so utterly as a father?" he'd lament, tears in his eyes. "What did I do to make her that hateful?" All I could do was hold him, knowing there were no easy answers. Elise's hatred seemed to have taken root long before I arrived, her cruel depravity already metastasizing unchecked. Our arrival had simply been the catalyst that ignited her worst impulses in an effort to destroy what she couldn't control. As the weeks dragged into months with no word from Elise, a tense unease gripped me. Was this just the warped calm before her inevitable counterattack? A part of me remained on edge, wondering when and how she'd strike back in retaliation. But that vigilance gradually faded as the weeks became months of blissful silence. Then, one sunny April morning, the doorbell rang. I tensed automatically until Edwin called out in shock. "Marta? It's Elise." My heart pounded as I rounded the corner to indeed find Elise on our doorstep, looking haggard and humbled. She avoided my gaze as a heavy silence stretched between us all. Finally, she spoke in a low, gravelly tone. I hit rock bottom. Lost my job. Got kicked out of my place. She swallowed hard, the very act of vulnerability seemingly agonizing for her. I have nowhere else to go. Tears sprang to Edwin's eyes as he reached out a trembling hand. "Oh, sweetheart." Elise flinched like she'd been struck. "Dad, please, don't. I don't deserve your sympathy after—" Her voice cracked with a rawness I'd never heard from her. "After everything." An endless, weighty pause consumed the air before she almost inaudibly uttered two words that stopped my heart. "I'm sorry." Another deafening silence as we both processed the impossible. Elise was finally facing the consequences of her malice and depravity with something resembling accountability. Then, to my utter astonishment, she turned her hollow gaze towards me. "Marta, I have put you through hell with my behavior, my anger, my cruel words. None of it was justified." I could only stare in shock as she squared her shoulders, almost violently forcing out the words. "You were right to cut me off, maybe by feeling what it's like to truly hit bottom." She trailed off, a muscle twitching in her jaw, before rallying once more. "I just hope I can begin trying to make amends. If you'll give me the chance." My breath caught in my throat as years of torment and suffering crashed together in a maelstrom of conflicting emotion. This was the reptilian brain's ultimate test: flee the source of trauma, or risk opening myself to further torment by extending an olive branch. As I met Edwin's fragile, pleading look, I realized only one path could even begin to heal our fractured family. Exhaling deeply, I finally spoke in a voice considerably calmer than I felt. "Come inside, Elise. We have a lot to talk about." I stepped out of the bedroom, pulling my robe tighter as the chill morning air caressed my skin. The house was eerily quiet, not a single sound to be heard. Theo must have already left for work. Grabbing my coffee mug, I made my way downstairs, my slippered feet sliding across the hardwood floors. That's when I heard the unmistakable voices drifting in from the living room. Theo's deep baritone mingled with the higher, melodic tones of a woman's voice, one I immediately recognized as Dana's. A knot formed in my stomach as I crept closer, my curiosity piqued. "Can't keep doing this, Theo. It's not fair to Lena," Dana whispered, her words laced with remorse. My heart stopped. What did she mean by that? Theo sighed heavily. I know, but you know how much I love you, right? Leaving Lena, it's not that simple." "Love her? Leaving me?" The mug slipped from my trembling fingers, shattering against the floor with a deafening crash. I froze, panic seizing every fiber of my being. The voices ceased abruptly, followed by hurried footsteps and the slamming of the front door. Dana must have fled. I stood rooted to the spot, numb with shock and disbelief. How could this be happening? Tears stung my eyes as the weight of their words sank in. Theo appeared in the hallway, his expression a mask of guilt and fear. "Lena, you're home? I thought you were at work." "Don't," I warned, my voice quivering with barely contained rage. "Don't you dare try to explain this away." His shoulders sagged in resignation. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." I clenched my fists, fighting back the urge to scream, to lash out. "My husband, and my best friend. How could you betray me like this?" Theo opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses." Brushing past him, I stormed upstairs, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. One thing was certain: I would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. And when I did, there would be hell to pay. I collapsed onto the bed, hot tears streaming down my face. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? Just hours ago, my life had seemed perfectly normal. A loving marriage, a rewarding career, an amazing best friend. Now it felt like my entire world was crumbling. Theo and I had been together for nearly 15 years, ever since we met in college. We'd had our ups and downs like any couple, but I'd always believed our bond was unbreakable. He was my rock, my support system, the one person I could always count on. Or so I thought. Dana had been my closest confidant for almost as long. We'd shared everything, our hopes, our dreams, our deepest secrets. She was the sister I'd never had. How could they have betrayed me like this? Snatching up my phone, I scrolled through our group chat history, my eyes stinging as I reread our messages. The inside jokes, the plans we'd made, the photos from our girls' nights out, all a lie. My chest tightened as anger and hurt warred within me. "Hey, you up for dinner tonight?" Dana had messaged me just last week. "It's been too long. Too long since what?" I wondered bitterly. "Since you stabbed me in the back?" Tossing my phone aside, I buried my face in my pillow, body-racking sobs shaking my frame. Amidst the torrent of emotions, one thought kept resurfacing. The little things I'd noticed but chosen to ignore. Theo's increasingly late nights at the office, the lingering perfume that clung to his clothes, a scent I didn't recognize, the way he'd grown more distant, more preoccupied in recent months. Fool, I berated myself. How could I have been so blind? Anger reignited within me, burning away the despair. I would not be the naive, clueless wife anymore. Dragging myself out of bed, I began to formulate a plan. If Theo wanted to play games, I'd show him exactly what I was capable of. Grabbing my laptop, I started digging, searching through our shared accounts, poring over phone records, analyzing every last detail of our lives with a calculating eye. I would uncover every sordid lie, every deception, and when I had all the evidence I needed, they would pay. Both of them. No more Mrs. Nice Girl. It was time to fight fire with fire. Over the next few days, I became a woman possessed. Every waking moment was dedicated to gathering evidence against Theo and Dana. I combed through phone records, bank statements, emails, anything that could shed light on their illicit affair. The more I uncovered, the sicker I felt. Countless hotel receipts, dozens of burner phone numbers, even a secret email account Theo had been using to communicate with her. How long had this been going on right under my nose? I needed more. More proof, more ammunition to use against them when the time came to confront their betrayal. Careful not to arouse Theo's suspicions, I suggested upgrading our home security system. With all the break-ins happening in the neighborhood lately, I think we should look into better cameras, I told him over dinner one night. You know, for peace of mind. Theo agreed readily enough, none the wiser as I installed discreet, hidden cameras throughout our house, including the bedroom. 3 days later, I got the evidence I'd been dreading. Theo was supposed to be working late, but the notification from the bedroom camera told a different story. Heart pounding, I pulled up the live feed on my laptop, fingers trembling. There they were, tangled together on our marital bed, locked in a passionate embrace. Dana's hands roamed greedily over my husband's body as he trailed kisses down her neck. The scene was like a dagger to my heart. I slammed the laptop shut, fighting waves of nausea. For a moment, I thought I might be sick. How could they? In our home, in the bed we'd shared for over a decade? White-hot fury blazed through me, burning away the hurt and anguish. They wanted to make a mockery of my marriage? Fine, I'd make them pay dearly for it. Jaw clenched, I began meticulously documenting everything, recording the videos, printing out financial statements, gathering a comprehensive dossier to use as a weapon against them. This was war, and I didn't intend to lose. When Theo finally came home hours later, I forced myself to act normal, keeping my anger tightly leashed. He'd never see the storm coming until it was too late. "Hey babe, sorry I'm so late," he said with a sheepish grin, dropping a kiss on my cheek. Client meetings ran over again. The blatant lie nearly made me snap. Instead, I just smiled thinly. "No worries. I understand how busy you've been lately." His smile faltered at my cool tone, but I didn't care. Let him wonder, let him squirm with guilt and trepidation, because soon Theo would realize just how big of a mistake he'd made. I would make sure of it. With each passing day, the evidence against Theo and Dana piled higher. Secret rendezvous at sleazy motels, hundreds of texts and emails exchanged, many too explicit for me to stomach reading. financial records showing lavish gifts and getaways charged to our joint accounts. The sheer depth of their deception was staggering. How had I been so blind, so trusting? Naively, I'd believed our marriage was rock solid, while Theo was spinning an intricate web of lies behind my back. Sickened by their brazenness, I began plotting my revenge in earnest. I would confront them, but not before ensuring I had the upper hand. First, I needed an ally, someone just as invested in bringing them down as I was. The answer came in the form of Rick, Dana's poor, unsuspecting husband. "Rick, hey, it's Lena," I said softly when he answered the phone. I need to talk to you about something. It's important." Within the hour, he was at my door, brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on? You sounded really upset on the phone." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I found out that Theo and Dana have been having an affair, for who knows how long." Rick's face drained of color. "What? No, that can't be right. Dana would never." Mutely, I handed him the phone containing all the damning photos and videos, letting the evidence speak for itself. He scrolled in numb silence, the devastation etched into his features, cutting me to the core. This was the ultimate betrayal, and we'd both fallen victim to the same depravity. "That filthy lying whore," Rick spat, hurling the phone across the room with a noise of disgust. "I'll kill her. I'll fucking kill them both." I placed a calming hand on his arm. "Don't do anything rash just yet," I said, keeping my voice level. "That's exactly what they want, to make us the unhinged ones while they play the victims. We need to be smart about this." Rick's eyes bored into mine, blazing with hurt and rage. "What did you have in mind?" A grim smile tugged at my lips. "We catch them together, in person, somewhere very public. Then we make a scene they'll never forget." For the next few days, Rick and I made our preparations, the bitterness and anger fueling our every move. I spearheaded the effort, keeping meticulous track of Theo and Dana's communications to determine the location of their next tryst. When the pieces fell into place, we were ready to strike. Well, fancy meeting you two here," I announced coldly, striding into the upscale restaurant trailed by Rick. My cheating husband and ex-best friend froze like deer in headlights, their perfect romantic evening about to come crashing down. It was time for the ultimate reckoning. In the days leading up to the confrontation, I was a whirlwind of activity. No detail was too small, no loose end left untied. This would be the moment I regained control, the moment I exposed Theo and Dana's reprehensible actions to the world. I made sure to have all my ducks in a row, legally speaking. I met with a high-powered divorce attorney and had the paperwork drawn up, ready to be filed at a moment's notice. My finances were separated, my assets protected. Anything of value that Theo could try to take or destroy in retaliation, precious heirlooms, important documents, I carefully stowed away in a secure location. He wouldn't be able to blindside me like he had before. Then there was the matter of pulling off the perfect scene for our very public reckoning. After some thought, I decided on Marco's, an ultra-romantic, incredibly exclusive restaurant that Theo had been raving about for weeks. Securing a reservation on such short notice took some creativity on my part. "Hi, I'm calling to make a reservation for two under the name Wilson," I told the snooty maitre d' in my sweetest voice. "You see, it's for our anniversary, and my husband has been just so excited about celebrating at your establishment." Dropping Theo's name and embellishing with a few personal details seemed to do the trick. They agreed to squeeze us in for the coveted 8 p.m. slot that Saturday night. With the plan in motion, all that remained was to get Theo and Dana to take the bait. Rick and I kept careful tabs on their communications, tracking their despicable pillow talk until the inevitable dinner date was set. Finally, the momentous evening arrived. I spent hours getting ready, dressing to the nines in my most devastatingly sexy cocktail dress and towering heels. Theo's eyes would be glued to me until the real fireworks began. At 7:30 on the dot, Rick and I strolled into the swanky restaurant side by side, the picture of polished confidence. I scanned the dimly lit dining room until I spotted the unmistakable forms of my husband and ex-best friend cuddled together in a cozy corner booth. Revulsion churned in my gut at the nauseating display. But this was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Locking eyes with Dana across the room, I allowed a slow, vindictive smile to spread across my face. "Showtime," I murmured. They gaped helplessly as Rick and I descended on their table like birds of prey. There would be no more secrets, no more lies this time. Only the bitter truth laid bare for all to see. Well, 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 I sneered, voice dripping with disdain. Isn't this just precious? Dana's face drained of color, but Theo simply blinked at me in shock, momentarily speechless. So much for that legendary cool under pressure. You two make just the cutest couple, don't you think? I crooned, reaching out to trail a finger down Dana's cheek. She flinched, her disgust palpable. Rick slammed his hands on the table, making them both jump. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't take you both out back and bash your skulls in, he snarled, eyes wild. For a long beat there was only stunned silence. Then Dana found her voice, reaching a shaking hand towards me in entreaty. Lena, please. This isn't what it looks like. We never meant to hurt you. The deafening crack of my palm across her face cut off her pathetic excuse. Gasps rippled through the hushed dining room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the Metretti frantically waving for security. Not that it mattered. The real damage had already been done. Save your lies, I hissed, leaning in until I could smell the booze on Theo's breath. Consider this the end of our marriages. You'll be hearing from my lawyer shortly. Turning on my heel, I strode away, Rick at my side. Theo's frantic calls echoed in my wake, but I didn't look back. Not this time. After all, I'd already won. The weeks following the disastrous dinner at Marco's were a whirlwind. Dana and Theo's desperate attempts at damage control fell on deaf ears. Rick and I were done listening to their lies. True to my word, I hired the most ruthless divorce attorney money could buy and filed the paperwork immediately. There would be no last-ditch efforts to save our sham of a marriage. Not after the depths of Theo's betrayal. He tried pleading with me, of course, called and texted incessantly, leaving long, rambling voicemails promising that their affair was over, begging me to give him another chance. Lena, baby, I was so stupid, he sobbed during one such call, but it's done, I swear. No more secrets, no more lies, just give me one more shot to make things right. I barely resisted the urge to laugh in his face. After everything, did he really think I was that naive? Dana's approach was more calculated, her messages laced with venom, as the realization set in that I wouldn't be manipulated again. You're making a huge mistake here, Lena, she warned me one afternoon when I refused to answer her calls. Theo and I, this is real. More real than whatever little fantasy you've been living in for years. He's going to leave you eventually, you know. Might as well cut your losses now before it gets even uglier. I merely deleted the venomous text without responding. Let the delusional bitch think what she wanted. Her words held no power over me now. Perhaps the most satisfying aspect was seeing the once unflappable Theo squirm under the scrutiny of his pristine reputation being called into question. With cold, calculated precision, I forwarded proof of his infidelity to his bosses, colleagues, business associates, anyone whose opinion of him mattered. The aftermath was deliciously brutal to witness. Meetings and client dinners abruptly canceled. The hush-hush rumors flying fast and furious behind his back. The disgusted, disappointed looks from those who had once admired and respected him. Theo's world was crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Rich, too, seemed to find a grim sense of satisfaction in watching Dana suffer. Once a darling of the design world with a thriving business, her standing in the community took a nosedive after the cheating scandal broke. Projects getting canceled left and right, he told me with a bitter chuckle one evening over drinks. We'd grown closer through our shared trauma, an unshakable alliance born of betrayal. Whoops, did I accidentally forward those incriminating pictures to all her colleagues and clients? My bad. Dana tried to maintain her poise, continuing to spin her web of lies even as it all unraveled around her. This is just a twisted game Lena's playing. She sneered during a TV interview aimed at doing damage control. She's unwell, consumed by jealousy and pettiness, all because Theo and I discovered a depth of feeling she could never. Rick's furious bellow cut off her diatribe. That's enough out of you, you lying sack of shit! The cameras kept rolling as he stormed onto the set, looming over Dana with clenched fists and blazing eyes. Security scrambled to intervene, but he shook them off with ease. You think this is a game? He roared, spittle flying. You ruined my life, you miserable whore, both of your lives. Security, Dana cried, recoiling in terror. "Get him out of here!" Rick's parting words dropped like a lead weight before he allowed himself to be escorted off stage. "Just you wait, Dana. This nightmare's only just beginning for you two." As the disastrous interview played on endless loop across news stations and social media platforms, I understood exactly what he meant. The reckoning had only begun, and Dana and Theo were about to learn that betraying me had been a grave mistake. The divorce proceedings were almost anticlimactic after the nuclear fallout Theo and Dana's affair had caused. With the mountain of evidence I'd painstakingly gathered, my attorney made short work of ensuring I received a generous settlement. Mr. Wilson's indiscretions have made this one of the more straightforward cases I've encountered, my laser-focused lawyer remarked with a thin smile as we reviewed the final paperwork. He'd be wise not to contest any of the terms. Theo didn't put up a fight, his spirit seemingly broken. The mighty marketing mogul had been reduced to a shell of his former self, his career in tatters, and his reputation utterly destroyed. Serves him right, I thought with a twist of satisfaction. As for Dana, well, let's just say karma came for her with a vengeance, courtesy of her soon-to-be ex-husband Rick. "You really think parading around with your little boy toy made you happy?" he snarled, looming over her as we divvied up assets. "Take a good look, because this is what true misery looks like." With vicious precision, Rick proceeded to dismantle nearly every aspect of Dana's carefully curated life. Her business receivables, her investment accounts, even the house they'd bought together. It all became battleground after battleground, with Rick wielding the full force of the law like a sledgehammer. By the time the dust settled, Dana had been utterly fleeced, left with a pittance of her net worth and her professional reputation in shreds. She deserved every bit of it after her disgusting betrayal. As a final insult, Rick had made sure to leak details of their toxic divorce proceedings to Dana's colleagues and friends, ensuring the juicy gossip would follow her for years to come. The scarlet letter she'd been branded with wouldn't be fading anytime soon. "Utter destitution looks good on you," Rick said with a harsh laugh as Dana was forcibly removed from the home they'd once shared, friends and family watching in mute horror. "But don't worry, at this rate, rock bottom is just around the corner." Her screams of protest were like music to my ears. Every ounce of misery inflicted was vindication, a balm to the gaping wounds she and Theo had inflicted with their selfish actions. As for me, well, I was finally free of the shackles of a toxic marriage, free to spread my wings and soar unburdened by lies and deception. It was an incredibly liberating feeling. Sure, there were still some loose ends to tie up in the wake of the tsunami of chaos caused by exposing Theo's affair. Muttered whispers from former friends followed me in certain social circles, though after witnessing my uncompromising dedication to delivering righteous vengeance, most knew better than to cross me. Then there was the tricky matter of public perception. "Miss Wilson, there have been some rumblings of concern over the heavy-handed tactics used in dissolving your marriage," one particularly bold reporter mentioned during a press junket. "Care to comment on accusations that you went too far?" I simply quirked an eyebrow, unmoved by his needling. "Too far? Please. After having my heart and my life shredded by two people I loved and trusted most?" A slow, razor-edged smile curved my lips. "Darling, I showed incredible restraint. Be grateful your pretty face is still intact." The reporter swallowed hard, his bravado extinguished as I leveled an icy glare in his direction. Satisfied, I turned on my heel and strode away, ready to embrace this new chapter of my life with open arms. Because in the end, despite their best efforts, Theo and Dana hadn't succeeded in breaking me. If anything, their unforgivable transgressions had awoken a merciless fire within, one that would never be extinguished. I was a woman reborn from the ashes of betrayal, and God help anyone who dared to cross me again. The divorce was finalized with ruthless efficiency, just as I'd wanted. Theo put up a meager fight, his lawyers quickly realizing the futility of going toe-to-toe with my legal team and the damning evidence stacked against him. In the end, I walked away with a generous settlement. Not that money could ever undo the profound betrayal I'd suffered. But it was a start, a foundation upon which I could build my new life free from the shackles of lies and deception. As the last remnants of my old life crumbled to dust, I surveyed the wreckage with a strange sense of calm. Yes, there was pain and anger still simmering beneath the surface. But overriding it all was a resilient determination to persevere, to rise like a phoenix from the ashes of heartbreak and humiliation. Theo and Dana's inability to take true accountability for their actions disgusted me. In all the pitiful, rambling apologies and attempts at reconciliation, never once did I detect genuine remorse, merely self-preservation instincts kicking in as the flames licked closer. The truth was, they were both fundamentally rotten people devoid of any true moral fiber, and I was well rid of their toxicity poisoning my existence any longer. With my newfound independence came a reinvigorating sense of purpose. Old hobbies and passions I'd let fall by the wayside were reignited as I reclaimed my identity beyond just being the wife. Evenings once occupied by draining emotional labor were now filled with book club meetings, cooking classes, early morning runs along the waterfront as the sun peeked over the horizon. I relished the solitude, reveling in putting myself first without guilt or obligation. My career also thrived as I poured my energies into new, exciting projects, no longer weighed down by the suffocating resentments of an unhappy home life. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt my world into something uniquely mine. A sanctuary meticulously curated to nurture my soul and bring me peace. There was power in taking back control that Theo and Dana had so carelessly stripped away. The friends who had eagerly turned on me during the scandal quickly realized their overtures would be rebuffed. I had no patience for fair-weather companions seeking to leech off my hard-earned success. My inner circle shrank. But what remained was an unshakable core of supportive, loyal hearts for whom I was eternally grateful. Rick became my closest confidant during those initial tumultuous months. We'd forged an unbreakable bond in the fires of shared trauma and betrayal. Where others in our lives had failed, we uplifted one another, not as self-pity acquaintances, but as respected comrades in arms. To new beginnings, he'd toast each time we met for our weekly drinks, clinking his glass against mine, and to leaving the assholes of our pasts where they belong, in the rearview mirror. I couldn't have said it better myself. My quest for vengeance might have stripped me of some illusions, but it had also reforged me with an indomitable spirit. A battle-hardened heart that would never be so naive as to hand out its trust indiscriminately. The woman I was 6 months ago was gone, banished along with the lies. In her place stood a new iteration, fierce, emboldened, unapologetic in her demands for loyalty and authenticity from those who entered her orbit. I'd been reborn from the fires of my own personal hell, and as I looked toward the hopeful horizon, I greeted the future with the hard-won lessons etched into my very bones. Never again would I be a willing victim of anyone else's deception. My focus was forging ahead, keeping my eyes trained on the winding path before me. Because this time, I held the map, and I alone would decide the journey's destinations.